welcome to Tales in the Dark. I know many of you enjoy relaxing with these videos, so I recommend turning down the volume until my voice is barely audible. It'll make the experience even more soothing. Before you close your eyes, let me know in the comments where you're listening from. Leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you and enjoy listening. Story 1. I was alone in the house. No guests, no reason to even open that door. But as I passed the hallway, I saw it closed, the handle turned sideways. Locked, I reached for it and paused. The air was thick, humid, and smelled like damp laundry and perfume I didn't own. I knocked. From the other side, someone knocked back. My hand recoiled from the door as if burned. The hollow echo of the knock lingered in the hallway, a perfect mimicry of my own tentative rap. One knock, then two in quick succession, exactly as I had done. I stood frozen, my breath shallow, listening. The house had been empty for weeks. I had checked every room upon arrival that morning. "Hello," I called, my voice strained against the silence. No answer came. Just the soft creaking of the old house settling around me. I pressed my ear against the wooden panel. The sound that filtered through wasn't a voice, but a soft scratching, like fingernails tracing patterns on the other side. My skin prickled with goosebumps. I tried the handle again, twisting with more force. It remained firmly locked. The rational part of my brain offered explanations. An old locking mechanism had finally given way. Air pressure had sealed the door. My perception was playing tricks after the long drive, but none of these explained the knock that answered mine. I retreated to the kitchen, made coffee, and convinced myself to ignore it. The house had belonged to my aunt before she passed away. I'd visited as a child, but never stayed in the guest room. Now, as the new owner, I had weeks to sort through her belongings, plenty of time to deal with a stuck door. Night fell. I worked in the living room, sorting through boxes of old photographs. My aunt smiled from faded images, always standing slightly apart from others in group pictures. She had been a solitary woman. In one photo, she stood in front of the guest room door, her hand on the knob, looking directly at the camera with an expression I couldn't quite read. A soft thud from down the hall interrupted my thoughts, then another, regular, methodical, footsteps pacing behind the locked door. My heart hammered against my ribs as I grabbed my phone and walked toward the sound. The footsteps stopped as I approached. The hallway felt narrower, the walls pressing inward. The door to the guest room looked different somehow, the wood grained deeper, the white paint yellowed. "This is private property," I said, trying to sound authoritative despite my trembling voice. "If someone's in there, I'm calling the authorities." Silence answered me, then a whisper so faint I might have imagined it. "Help." I took a step back, thumbing the emergency call button on my phone. But before I could press it, something slid under the door, a small, folded piece of paper. I stared at it, unable to move. The paper was yellowed, brittle with age. Crouching down, I picked it up with shaking fingers and unfolded it carefully. Inside was a single line of text written in faded ink: "Don't try to open the door." My phone slipped from my grasp, clattering on the hardwood floor. The screen cracked. Sleep eluded me that night. I sat in the living room with all the lights on, jumping at every creak and settling noise. Morning brought clarity and courage. In daylight, I convinced myself that stress and imagination had gotten the best of me. I needed tools to open that door, to prove to myself nothing was amiss. I drove to the hardware store and returned with a screwdriver set and a small hammer. The door would yield to rational intervention, but as I approached the hallway, I noticed something wet seeping out from under the guest room door. A dark liquid spread across the hardwood floor, thick and viscous. I stepped in it before I realized not blood as I had feared, but water. dark, stagnant water that smelled of river mud and decay. It soaked into my socks, cold against my skin. The door itself seemed to sweat moisture, droplets forming on the white paint and running down in rivulets. I pressed my hand against it and felt it vibrate with a subtle, constant tremor. Using the screwdriver, I removed the doorknob mechanism. Water gushed through the hole, soaking my hands and clothes. I backed away, watching in horror as the flow stopped abruptly. Peering through the exposed opening where the knob had been, I saw only darkness, not the darkness of an unlit room, but a void, absolute and unending. I called a locksmith who arrived that afternoon. He was a middle-aged man with calloused hands who looked at the door with professional detachment. "Strange lock," he said, examining what remained of the mechanism. "Never seen one quite like this." He worked in silence, removing the remaining hardware. When he finally pushed the door, it swung open with surprising ease. The room beyond was ordinary in every way: a neatly made bed with floral covers, dusty curtains, a dresser with a mirror. Dry, normal, no sign of water damage anywhere. "All set," the locksmith said, handing me a new set of keys. Door was just warped from humidity. This one might stick sometimes, but it won't lock you out again. I paid him and watched him leave, unable to reconcile what I was seeing with what I had experienced. The room looked uninhabited, undisturbed for months. I stepped inside cautiously. The air was stale but dry, no damp smell, no perfume. On the dresser sat a small jewelry box I didn't remember from my childhood visits. I opened it slowly. Inside lay a single key on a thin silver chain, old, ornate, clearly not belonging to any door in this house. As I held it up, the mirror reflected not just the key, but a figure standing behind me in the doorway. I spun around. No one was there. Turning back to the mirror, I saw only my own pale face. That night I slept in my aunt's room, keeping the guest room door firmly open. My dreams were filled with water rising, flowing, drowning. I woke to the sound of the guest room door closing with a soft click. In the hallway, puddles had formed again. The door was shut, the new handle turned sideways. Locked. This time I didn't knock. Instead, I began to document everything. I took photos of the water, the door, the puddles that formed and disappeared. I recorded the sounds, the knocking, the whispers, the footsteps. I made notes of patterns. The phenomena intensified at night, receded by morning. The water always came first, then the sounds. The key from the jewelry box remained warm to the touch no matter where I placed it. Once, on impulse, I tried it in the new lock. It didn't fit, but as I held it against the keyhole, the metal grew hot enough to blister my fingers. Days passed. I slept less, documented more. The house began to feel like a living thing, breathing around me. The walls in the hallway developed hairline cracks that seemed to form patterns, almost like writing in a language I couldn't understand. My aunt's belongings revealed little. She had lived simply, kept few records, but in her desk I found a journal. Most entries were mundane garden plans, recipes, notes about the weather, until I reached an entry from 20 years ago. "It's asking to come through again. I won't allow it, not after what happened last time." No explanation followed, no clarification. Just daily entries resuming their normal pattern afterward. One night, sleep-deprived and desperate for answers, I sat outside the guest room door with my back against the opposite wall. The door had remained locked for days despite multiple attempts with different tools to open it. "What do you want?" I asked the empty hallway, my voice barely audible. The reply came not in words, but in sensation, a cold draft that carried the scent of perfume. My aunt's perfume, I realized with sudden clarity, the same fragrance she wore in those old photographs. Then the sound of paper sliding against wood, another note emerging from beneath the door. With trembling fingers, I unfolded it. You open the box, now you must choose. The key around my neck I had taken to wearing it grew warm against my skin. I understood then what my aunt had protected this house from for decades, what she had kept contained behind that door, not something trying to get out, but something trying to get in. The guest room wasn't just a room, it was a boundary, a threshold, and I had disturbed it. That night I made my decision. I took the key from around my neck and approached the door one final time. Water seeped around my feet, soaking through my shoes, but I barely noticed. The handle turned under my hand without resistance. The door swung open to reveal not a room, but a vast, dark expanse of water stretching endlessly before me. Stars reflected on its surface, though there was no sky above, only more darkness. At the edge where the hallway floor met this impossible ocean stood a figure with its back to me. It wore my aunt's favorite dress. Slowly it began to turn. I closed the door before I could see its face. Using the old key, I locked it from the outside. The key melted in the lock, metal running like quicksilver between my fingers, hardening into an unbreakable seal. The water receded, the knocking stopped, the house fell silent. I still live here in this house with its sealed guest room. I've replaced the carpet in the hallway, painted over the cracks in the walls. To visitors, it's just an old house with one inaccessible room, plumbing damage, I explain with a practiced smile. But sometimes when I pass that door, I feel it watching me. And sometimes when the house is quiet and my guard is down, I hear it a soft scratching from the other side, like fingers tracing patterns, waiting, always waiting. Story 2, I pulled up the boards to deal with a lake. What I found wasn't water, it was dark, wet earth, fresh, cold. The smell hit me immediately, soil, mildew, and something coppery underneath it all. Then I saw the shape of a handprint pressed into the dirt, fingers curled. It was facing upward. I crouched down, my fingers hovering above the print. The dirt was fresh, almost slick with moisture. That made no sense. My house sat on a concrete foundation. There should have been nothing but empty space and pipes beneath these boards. The handprint wasn't small like a child's, but it wasn't quite adult-sized either. The fingers were long, slender, with sharp-looking nail impressions at the tips. I reached down hesitantly and placed my palm above it, not touching but measuring. It was smaller than mine by several inches. A sound made me jerk back, a subtle shifting from beneath the exposed soil. I scrambled away, knocking over my toolbox. The noise echoed through the empty house, and when silence returned, I convinced myself I'd imagined it, just the house settling. Old houses make noises. They breathe and sigh and creak. But my house wasn't old. I grabbed my phone and took several pictures, the flash illuminating the dark, moist earth. Something wasn't right about the color either. The soil was almost black, with strange reddish undertones that the camera captured better than my eyes. This is impossible, I whispered to myself, the sound of my voice strangely comforting in the silence. The previous owners hadn't mentioned anything unusual during the sale. No renovations had been done to the floors. The inspection had been thorough, I'd made sure of it. I decided to dig a little just to see how deep this went. Using a small garden trowel from my toolbox, I scooped away at the dirt where the handprint was, careful not to disturb the shape itself. The soil came away easily, too easily, like it had been recently turned. After removing several inches, my trowel hit something solid. Not concrete, not a pipe, something that gave slightly under pressure. I brushed away more dirt with my fingers, heart pounding as I uncovered what felt like fabric. Rough, damp fabric. I pulled back immediately, wiping my hands on my jeans. My breathing had become shallow, quick. The copper smell seemed stronger now. That night I couldn't sleep. I'd replaced the floorboard temporarily, weighing it down with a heavy bookcase, but I knew what lay beneath. My mind raced with possibilities, each more disturbing than the last. I tried researching the history of my property online, but found nothing unusual. No missing persons cases, no strange accidents, nothing that would explain what I'd found. My dreams, when sleep finally came, were filled with images of hands reaching up through dirt, fingers clawing desperately at the underside of my floor. I woke to a strange sensation. The floor beneath my bed felt different, somehow softer. I placed my palm flat against the hardwood, and it yielded slightly, as if I were pressing down on a sponge. When I removed my hand, the wood retained the impression for several seconds before slowly rising back to normal. The house was quiet, too quiet. The usual morning sounds of birds outside my window were absent. Even the distant hum of traffic seemed muted, as if something was absorbing all sound. I called a contractor that morning. The earliest appointment was days away. Water damage, he asked over the phone. Something like that, I replied, not knowing how to explain what I'd actually found. While waiting for the contractor, I began documenting everything. I kept a journal, recording every unusual occurrence in my home. The strange softness of the floors spread gradually. First my bedroom, then the hallway. The bathroom remained normal, but the kitchen floor developed a subtle give that hadn't been there before. The soil beneath the first floorboard remained exposed. I checked it multiple times each day. The handprint never changed position, but the soil around it seemed to shift slightly between viewings. Sometimes it appeared smoother, sometimes more disturbed. Once I found what looked like drag marks leading away from the handprint toward the wall. On the third night, I woke to a faint scratching sound. Not the usual sounds of a house at night. This was rhythmic, deliberate. Scratch, scratch, pause, scratch, scratch, pause. It seemed to come from beneath the floor, moving slowly around the room, tracing a path that followed the perimeter. I switched on my bedside lamp. The scratching stopped immediately. I held my breath, listening for any continuation. Nothing. Just as I convinced myself it had been part of a dream, a thump came from directly beneath my bed, not loud but distinct, as if someone had knocked gently from below. I didn't sleep again that night. The next day I noticed dark stains forming on several floorboards throughout the house. They looked like water damage, spreading in irregular patterns that resembled nothing so much as reaching fingers. I took photographs, comparing them to ones I'd taken the previous day. The stains were definitely growing. When I pressed a paper towel against one of the stains, it came away damp with a dark substance that wasn't quite water. It had that same earthy, coppery smell. I became obsessed with the sounds beneath my house. I purchased a sensitive recording device and placed it on the floor each night, reviewing the audio each morning. Most recordings captured nothing unusual, just the normal sounds of a quiet house. But occasionally, very faintly, I caught what sounded like breathing, deep, labored breathing, as if from something large trapped in a small space. One recording captured what might have been words, though so distorted and faint I couldn't make them out. I sent the audio file to a friend who worked in sound engineering. Her response was quick and puzzled. Where did you record this? It sounds like it's coming through several feet of some dense material, and it's been heavily degraded. I didn't tell her where I'd recorded it. The contractor never showed up. When I called to follow up, the company had no record of my appointment, no record of my call. The person I spoke with had no recollection of our conversation. My journal entries became more frantic as the days passed. I began measuring the floors, marking walls at floor level with a pencil to track any changes in height. The entire house seemed to be gradually sinking, but only by millimeters. Too small to notice casually, but my measurements didn't lie. I pried up another floorboard, this time in the hallway where one of the dark stains had spread. Beneath it, the same fresh, dark soil, but this time no handprint. Instead, I found what looked like a path tunneled through the dirt, as if something had burrowed its way from one part of the house to another. The smell was stronger now, unmistakable. The coppery undertone I detected earlier had intensified. It reminded me of something I couldn't quite place, something primal and alarming. My skin began to change. Dry patches appeared on my hands and feet, darkening to a brownish hue that no amount of lotion seemed to affect. My fingernails grew faster than normal, becoming thicker, harder. When I trimmed them, they made a sound like cutting through thin wood rather than keratin. The scratching beneath the floors became a nightly occurrence, always stopping when I acknowledged it with light or sound. Sometimes, when the house was completely silent, I could hear what sounded like whispering coming from the heating vents. Not words exactly, but patterns of sound that mimicked human speech. I set up cameras throughout my home, hoping to capture something, anything that would validate what I was experiencing. Most footage showed nothing unusual, but one night, the camera in the living room recorded the floorboards rippling slightly, as if something was moving beneath them, pressing upward before subsiding. The movement lasted only seconds, but watching it made my skin prickle with recognition. It mirrored exactly the motion of someone turning over in their sleep. My dreams became more vivid. In them, I was always digging, sometimes to escape something, sometimes searching for something precious I'd lost. The earth in my dreams was always wet, clinging to my hands, filling my mouth when I tried to scream. I would wake gasping, my sheets damp with sweat that smelled increasingly of soil. The turning point came when I found footprints, not in the dirt beneath the floor, but on the floor itself, dark, damp outlines that appeared overnight in my hallway. Small footprints about the size of the handprint I'd discovered initially. They led from the spot where I'd first pulled up the floorboard down the hall, stopping abruptly at my bedroom door. The footprints were not made of dirt as I first assumed. When I tried to clean them, the material smeared rather than lifting away. It seemed to be coming from within the wood itself, seeping upward through the grain. That night I barricaded my bedroom door with a dresser and slept with a hammer beside my pillow. The scratching came again, but this time it was at my door. Scratch, scratch, pause, scratch, scratch, pause, a perfect rhythm, patient and persistent. Then a new sound joined it, a low, humid breathing, so close it could have been right beside my ear. I clutched the hammer, frozen in my bed, unwilling to move or even blink. "I know you're listening," I whispered finally, my voice cracking with fear and something else, a strange anticipation. "What do you want?" The scratching stopped, the breathing ceased. In the sudden silence, I heard a soft thump as something fell against my door. Not a knock this time, but the weight of a body slumping against wood. Morning found me still awake, still clutching the hammer. When I finally gathered the courage to move the dresser and open my door, the hallway was empty. but the footprints had changed direction. Now they led away from my door, back toward the spot where this had all begun. I followed them, hammer in hand. The floorboard I had originally removed was no longer covered by the bookcase. It lay several feet away, as if pushed aside by something emerging from below. The opening now revealed not just the handprint and soil I'd seen before, but something new, a small tunnel, dark and perfectly round, leading down into the earth. It was just large enough for a person to enter if they were willing to crawl. Fresh air flowed up from the tunnel, carrying scents of soil and growing things. Nothing frightening, nothing dead or decaying as I had feared, just earth, roots, life. A piece of paper lay beside the opening, dirt smudged but clearly torn from my own journal. On it, in handwriting disturbingly similar to my own, were words I had never written. I found a way through. Come see what's growing down here. I knelt beside the opening, peering down into darkness that somehow didn't seem threatening anymore. The hammer fell from my loosened grip as I reached toward the tunnel, my transformed hands now perfectly suited for digging, for burrowing, for joining whatever waited below. My fingernails scraped against the wooden floor as I crawled forward, leaving behind marks identical to those I'd been hearing for days. Something was changing, had been changing all along, not just my house, not just the earth beneath it. And whatever I was becoming, it belonged down there in the dark, wet soil, where something waited that knew my name and had been calling me home. Story 3, I always leave it open, every time. It's just a habit. I hate not seeing what's behind it, but tonight it was shut tight when I walked in. The room was warm with steam, though I hadn't used the shower. The curtain clung to the tub like it was pulled from the inside, and the floor was wet. Water droplets traced patterns on the tiles, forming what looked almost like footprints leading to the door where I stood frozen. The bathroom mirror was fogged except for a single clear spot in the center, as if someone had wiped it clean with their palm. My reflection stared back at me, but something about it seemed wrong, like my movements were a fraction of a second behind. I reached out to pull the curtain open, my hand trembling slightly. The plastic felt unusually warm against my fingertips. As I gripped the edge, I felt resistance, subtle but unmistakable, as if someone on the other side held it closed. I yanked it open in one swift motion. Nothing, just my empty tub, bone dried despite the wet floor. The shower head gleamed in the fluorescent light, a single drop forming at its tip before falling with a musical ping against the porcelain. That was the first incident. The next morning I convinced myself it was nothing. Perhaps condensation from the neighbor's bathroom had seeped through the walls. An old building with faulty pipes could explain the steam. The mind plays tricks when you live alone. I went about my routine, making notes for my research project, answering emails, preparing lunch. Normal things that anchored me to reality, but throughout the day I felt watched. The sensation crawled across my skin whenever I turned my back to an open doorway. That night I deliberately left the bathroom door open while I showered, keeping my eyes fixed on the gap in the curtain. The hot water relaxed my tense muscles as I listened to music playing from my phone on the sink. Midway through my shower, the music stopped. Not faded, not skipped, just stopped. I froze, water streaming down my face, and peered through the gap. My phone had moved from where I'd placed it. Now it sat at the edge of the sink, its screen dark. I stepped out, wrapping a towel around myself, and checked the phone. It showed no record of playing music at all. My playlist was closed, with no recent items in its history. I began documenting everything. Each morning I took photos of how I left rooms before leaving for work. Each evening I compared the current state to the images. Small discrepancies emerged, books tilted at different angles on shelves, chairs rotated slightly, the fruit in my bowl rearranged. Never anything dramatic enough to scream intrusion, but consistent enough to erode my certainty. Sleep became difficult. I would wake to the sound of water running, only to find all faucets dry. The bathroom mirror began to develop peculiar patterns in its fog, not random condensation, but symmetrical designs like frost patterns on winter windows, once what looked distinctly like handprints. One night, plagued by insomnia, I sat at my desk reviewing the documentation of these anomalies when I noticed something in the background of one photo. In the mirror behind me, captured by accident, a dark shape stood in the doorway, blurry and indistinct, but undeniably there. I spun around in my chair, heart pounding, but found only my empty apartment staring back. I printed the photo and studied it under different lights. The shape had formed shoulders, a head, what might have been arms hanging at its sides, not a trick of shadow or reflection. That night I placed a voice recorder in the bathroom before bed. I woke to find it moved to the kitchen counter. With shaking hands I pressed play. Static filled my kitchen, then the unmistakable sound of shower curtain rings sliding along the rod, water running. Then a voice distant but clear enough humming a melody I recognized but couldn't place. The recording continued for 20 minutes of water sounds before falling silent. I played it again, listening closely through headphones. Behind the water and humming, nearly imperceptible, was another sound, breathing, not mine, different in rhythm and depth. The bathroom became a threshold I crossed with increasing dread. Each morning, regardless of how I left it, the curtain would be closed. Each evening, the mirror would be fogged in patterns too precise to be random. The wet footprints became a regular feature, always leading from the tub to wherever I stood. I tried sleeping elsewhere at friends' homes, at hotels. But upon returning, I'd find evidence that whatever shared my space had noticed my absence. Once my shower items, shampoo, soap, razor, were arranged in a perfect circle in the tub. Another time, every drain in the apartment was plugged with towels, soaked through as if prepared for a flood. I began talking to it, asking questions into empty rooms, setting up cameras that inevitably malfunctioned or showed nothing despite the physical evidence of presence. The more I acknowledged it, the bolder the manifestations became. The breaking point came during a thunderstorm. Power flickered throughout the neighborhood as rain lashed against windows. I was in the living room when darkness swept through the apartment. In the momentary blindness before my eyes adjusted, I heard the shower curtain rings sliding across the rod with a metallic scrape. Lightning flashed, illuminating my path as I moved toward the bathroom. The door stood ajar, soft light spilling out despite the power outage. Steam billowed from the opening. Water was running, I could hear it splashing against the tub floor. I pushed the door open wider. The shower curtain was drawn, a silhouette visible behind its translucent plastic, a dark, person-shaped form standing motionless under the spray. Steam writhed around it like living tendrils. "Who are you?" My voice cracked with fear, and something else, a strange recognition growing in my chest. The figure turned toward me behind the curtain, its hand raised, pressing against the plastic, creating a bulge that extended toward me. The curtain distorted its features, but I could see enough the shape of its face, the hollow where eyes should be. Thunder cracked overhead as I stepped forward, my own hand raising to meet it. Our palms aligned through the barrier, and I felt warmth spreading through the plastic. The curtain began to slide open, moving by itself. What I saw wasn't a stranger. The face that emerged from behind the curtain was my own, but wrong in subtle ways. The eyes too dark, the smile too wide, movements too fluid. Water ran down its face and body, but it wasn't water at all. It was too thick, too dark, moving with purpose rather than gravity. We stared at each other across an impossible divide. My doppelganger reached for me with dripping hands. "You've been waiting for me," it said with my voice, but layered with something ancient and patient. I stumbled back, knocking over bottles on the counter. The figure stepped from the tub, water cascading from its form, pooling at feet that didn't quite touch the ground. Where the liquid met the floor, it spread in intricate patterns rather than random splashes. "What do you want?" I managed to ask. Its head tilted at an angle no neck should allow, to replace what was taken, to fill what was emptied. My voice, but spoken as if learning human speech for the first time. It moved closer, each step bringing the scent of mineral water and something earthier. "We've been trying to reach you for so long, through reflections, through water, through the spaces between sleeping and waking." My back pressed against the wall. The power returned suddenly, lights flickering on to reveal nothing. An empty bathroom, the shower curtain open, the tub dry. But my clothes were soaked through, and the mirror showed only half my reflection, the other half remaining an empty void. I moved, it moved. We raised our hands in unison. But where my hand should have cast a shadow on the wall, there was nothing. The light passed through me. That night I understood. The intruder in my home wasn't invading my space, I was invading its existence. With each documentation, each investigation, I had thinned the barrier between us. Now I live with my reflection. Sometimes I'm the one behind the curtain, watching myself enter the bathroom with that same look of dread I once wore. Sometimes I'm the one who finds the curtain closed, knowing what waits behind it. I leave notes for myself on fogged mirrors. I arrange items in patterns only I would understand. I exist in the steam and the water and the silence between heartbeats. And sometimes, when the barrier between us grows thinnest, I can almost remember which one of us was real to begin with. The shower curtain is always closed now. I prefer it that way. I know what's behind it. It's me, it always was. Story 4, I live on the 7th floor. No balcony, no ledge, but when I looked out my living room window, I saw a face. Not staring and staring out as if someone were inside my apartment, silently looking at something in the distance. The air turned cold, carrying the scent of dust and damp drywall. When I blinked, the face was gone, but the window was fogged with breath. At first, I convinced myself it was a reflection, mind playing tricks, the brain searching for patterns in random shapes. I approached the window slowly, running my fingers across the cool glass where the fog had been. The condensation felt wrong against my skin, thick and slightly oily, nothing like normal breath. The fog didn't fade as I touched it. Instead, it seemed to crawl away from my fingertips, receding to the edges of the glass. That night I slept with the lights on, the quiet hum of the refrigerator keeping me company. Sleep came in fragments, broken by the persistent feeling of being watched. Each time I startled awake, my eyes went straight to the window, now covered by thin curtains that did little to block the glow from neighboring buildings. The shadows they cast on my wall seemed to shift and change, even when nothing outside was moving. I began documenting everything, the strange face, the oily condensation, the shifting shadows. I kept a notebook by my bed, jotting down each occurrence. The act of recording made it real, but also manageable, at least that's what I told myself. The following evening, I sat in my living room, staring at the window from across the room. Nothing unusual happened until I noticed a small, dark smudge forming near the bottom corner of the glass. I watched, transfixed, as it slowly expanded, stretching upward like ink blooming in water. My heart hammered against my ribs as the smudge took shape fingers, a hand pressing against the glass from the wrong side. I grabbed my phone and took a picture. The flash illuminated the room for a brief moment, and when I looked back at the window, the hand was gone. I checked the photo immediately. Nothing there, not even a smudge. That's when the smell came back, dust and damp drywall, but now with an undercurrent of something metallic. The scent grew stronger near the walls, as if they were somehow producing it. I pressed my ear against the cool surface of my living room wall and heard a faint scratching sound, like fingernails against plaster, moving inside the walls. I pulled away sharply, my skin prickling with goosebumps. The scratching stopped the moment I backed away. I tried telling myself it was pipes, old building, water pressure, mice perhaps. The rational explanations piled up in my mind, a fragile barricade against mounting fear. That night the power went out. Just in my apartment, light still shone from windows across the street. I fumbled for my phone, using its glow to navigate through suddenly unfamiliar rooms. In the bathroom, I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror, except my reflection didn't match my movements. As I raised my hand to my face, my reflection lowered its hand. When I stepped back in shock, it stepped forward. I fled the bathroom, slamming the door behind me. The sound echoed through the apartment, followed by a deep silence. Then the knob began to turn, slowly, deliberately. I watched, paralyzed, as the door eased open, revealing nothing but darkness beyond. The next morning, I awoke on my couch, sunlight streaming through the windows. The power was back on. The bathroom door stood open, revealing ordinary tiles and fixtures, normal, safe. I almost convinced myself it had been a nightmare. Almost. The notebook where I'd been documenting the strange occurrences sat on the coffee table. I reached for it, flipping through pages of my increasingly frantic handwriting. On the last page I'd written on, below my final entry, was a single line in handwriting that resembled mine but wasn't quite right. I see you watching. My hands trembled as I dropped the notebook. The words seemed to writhe on the page, the ink too dark, too wet. I backed away, bumping into the wall behind me. It felt warm to the touch, alive. I decided to record everything, set up my phone to capture video while I slept, placed another in the living room aimed at the window. I needed evidence, needed to prove to myself I wasn't losing my mind. The recordings showed nothing unusual, just empty rooms, quiet nights, but reviewing the footage, I noticed something strange: gaps. Moments where the recording jumped, skipping forward by seconds or minutes. Digital hiccups, perhaps, or something editing itself out. The knocking began next, gentle at first, barely audible, coming from inside the walls, a soft rhythm like knuckles against drywall. It followed me from room to room, always just behind wherever I stood. When I pressed my ear to the wall, it stopped immediately. When I moved away, it resumed. One night, half asleep and desperate, I knocked back. 3 sharp raps against the wall beside my bed. Silence fell instantly. The entire apartment seemed to hold its breath. Then, 3 identical knocks responded, not from the wall, but from under my bed. I couldn't look. I lay frozen, staring at the ceiling as sweat beaded on my forehead. The smell of dust and metal filled the room, so strong I could taste it. Another knock sounded, closer now, from the foot of my bed. Morning found me huddled in the corner of my kitchen, clutching a knife I didn't remember grabbing. I called in sick to work. Spent the day sitting with my back against the front door, watching the windows, the walls, the ceiling. The knocking had stopped, but something else had started, a vibration in the floorboards, subtle, rhythmic, like footsteps circling my position. I tried to leave, packed a bag, but when I opened my front door, there was only a blank wall where the hallway should have been. Solid, seamless, as if the building had forgotten there was supposed to be an exit. I pounded against it until my fists were raw, screaming for help that never came. When I turned back, my apartment had changed. The dimensions were slightly off. Corners that should have been right angles weren't quite square. The ceiling seemed lower in places, and every reflective surface, windows, mirrors, the screen of my TV showed the same thing. My apartment, perfectly rendered but empty, no sign of me. I took out my phone, desperate to call someone, anyone. The screen lit up, showing dozens of missed calls and messages, all from my own number. I opened the most recent message with trembling fingers. "Let me in, I'm getting colder out here." A knock at the window made me jump, not from outside, impossible, 7 floors up, but from inside the glass itself. The face was back, pressing outward, features distorted by pressure against the glass. My face, but not quite right, eyes too wide, smile too sharp. It mouthed words I couldn't understand, breath fogging the glass from the wrong side. Then slowly, it raised a hand and pressed pale fingers against the window. The glass began to bulge outward, stretching impossibly without breaking. I backed away, knocking over a lamp that shattered on the floor. The sound seemed to excite whatever was in the window. Its smile widened, teeth visible now, too many teeth. The glass continued to stretch as the face pushed against it, distorting further with each inch gained. I ran to the bathroom, locking the flimsy door behind me. The mirror above the sink showed my reflection, pale and terrified, but as I watched, it tilted its head while I remained still. It raised a finger to its lips, shushing me. Then it reached forward, arm extending impossibly through the glass as if it were water. Fingers stretching toward me, growing longer, sharper. I scrambled backward, pressing against the cool tile of the shower. My reflection's arm continued to extend, elbow and shoulder distorting as it pushed further into my reality. Its fingers were inches from my face when the mirror suddenly cracked, a spiderweb of fractures spreading across its surface. Behind each piece of broken glass was a different fragment of my face, blinking, watching, waiting. The vibration in the floors grew stronger, the knocking in the walls more insistent. Dust rained from the ceiling as the entire apartment seemed to contract around me. The smell of metal grew overwhelming, and I realized it was blood, my blood, from where I'd cut myself on the broken mirror without noticing. The cuts on my hands formed patterns, symbols I didn't recognize but somehow understood, an invitation, a door. I live on the 7th floor, no balcony, no ledge, but I'm not alone here anymore. Something lives in the spaces between rooms, between moments, between heartbeats. It wears my face when I'm not looking. It writes in my notebook while I sleep. It knocks from inside walls that shouldn't have space for anything to hide. Yesterday, I covered all reflective surfaces with sheets and towels. Today, I found them neatly folded on my bed. The face in the window keeps watching, but not me. It watches you through my eyes as I write these words. It sees you reading. It knows you're there. And now it wants to come through. Story 5, I live alone. I hung the pictures myself, 2 on the left wall, 1 on the right. But this morning one had moved, and by afternoon another. They weren't just shuffled. They were positioned as if someone had carefully realigned them to form a pattern. The air smelled faintly of turpentine and old paper. Now they're all facing inward toward the center of the hallway. At first I dismissed it. Perhaps I'd forgotten how I arranged them, an absent mind playing tricks on me, but deep down I knew their positions with certainty. Those paintings were family heirlooms, a landscape with a twisted oak tree, a portrait of a woman with vacant eyes, and an abstract piece with shapes that seemed to shift if you stared too long. I'd measured their placement precisely, hung them with care. I documented their new positions with my phone camera, evidence for my own sanity. The photos confirmed what my eyes told me they had moved, not fallen, not tilted, but deliberately repositioned. In the center of the hallway, I noticed something new, a coldness that hadn't been there before, like walking through an invisible curtain of winter air. That night I heard it, a soft scraping sound, barely audible above my own breathing, the sound of a frame sliding against wallpaper. I lay frozen in my bed, counting my heartbeats, waiting for it to stop. When morning arrived, I checked the hallway with reluctance burning in my stomach. Now all three paintings hung on the same wall, arranged in a descending diagonal line. The woman in the portrait seemed to be looking at the landscape, which now appeared darker than before. The abstract piece had rotated, its shapes now resembling something almost recognizable, a face, perhaps, or a doorway. I took more photos, compared them with yesterday's. The differences were subtle but undeniable. The woman's vacant gaze had shifted slightly. The twisted oak in the landscape had gained an extra branch. In the abstract piece, what I first thought were random shapes now suggested fingers reaching outward. I invited a friend over that evening. "Do these paintings look strange to you?" I asked casually. He glanced at them briefly, shrugged. Nice artwork, family stuff, that was all. He didn't see what I saw, but as he walked down the hallway, he paused, rubbing his arms. "Why is it so cold right here?" he asked. I said nothing. After he left, I decided to remove the paintings altogether. I lifted the abstract piece first, revealing a patch of wall slightly darker than the surrounding area. As I touched this discolored section, a vibration hummed through my fingertips, subtle but persistent. I quickly rehung the painting and stepped back. That night the scraping sounds returned, louder now, accompanied by a faint whisper that might have been the wind, might have been words. I recorded it on my phone. Playing it back in the morning light, I heard nothing at first. Then, increasing the volume to maximum beneath the static, closer together, almost there. The paintings now hung side by side on the same wall, frames touching. The landscape had darkened further, the oak tree now barely visible against a nearly black sky. The woman's vacant eyes now looked directly at me from any angle. The abstract shapes had resolved into something more definite, a doorway, with something waiting just beyond it. I documented everything meticulously. I photographed the paintings from multiple angles, noting changes in color, position, and content. I measured the temperature in the hallway, significantly colder than the rest of the house. I placed a voice recorder in the hallway overnight. The recording captured the scraping sounds clearer now, then a sound like paper tearing, followed by silence. The morning revealed the paintings had changed again, not just their positions, but their content. The landscape was now completely black, except for a tiny yellow light in the distance. The portrait showed the woman with her back turned, and the abstract piece had become a door, slightly ajar, with darkness beyond. I felt a compulsion to touch them, to feel the canvas under my fingers. The portrait was ice cold. The landscape radiated heat. The abstract door seemed to pulse with both warmth and coldness, alternating like a heartbeat. I decided to document the phenomena more aggressively. I set up a camera to record the hallway through the night. I painted small marks on the wall around each frame to prove any movement. I placed objects, a book, a vase, a clock in the hallway to see if they too would be affected. The footage showed nothing for hours, static images of an empty hallway. Then, at what must have been deep night, the video distorted. Lines of interference scrolled across the screen. When the image cleared, the paintings remained in place, but my markers had vanished. The book lay open to a blank page. The vase contained wilted flowers that hadn't been there before. The clock had stopped. More disturbing was what I couldn't see in the footage, my own nightly visit to the hallway. Yet there I was on camera, walking slowly toward the paintings, reaching out to touch each one in turn, then standing motionless before them for nearly an hour. I have no memory of this. The paintings now formed a triptych, their frames fused together into one large piece. The landscape, the portrait, and the abstract had merged into a single image, a doorway in a dark landscape, with the woman standing before it, her back still turned, her hand reaching for the handle. I found myself drawn to this new creation. Standing before it, I could smell soil and rain and something metallic. The cold spot had expanded to fill the entire hallway. When I placed my hand on the wall beside the painting, it vibrated with a low, constant hum. I decided to make one final record before deciding what to do. I photographed the new triptych, recording its dimensions, the new details that had emerged. As I reviewed these images on my camera, I noticed something in the background, a figure standing at the end of the hallway, a figure with my face watching me. I looked up from the camera, no one there, returned to the image. The figure remained. I took another photo. Now 2 figures in the background, another, 3, each one watching me, each one with my face, but not quite my expression. Hungry faces, patient faces. That night I made a decision. The triptych had to go. I would remove it, burn it, bury the ashes, end whatever had begun. I approached with determination, hammer in hand to break the frame. But standing before it, I saw the door in the painting had opened wider. The woman had turned, revealing not a face but a swirling darkness. The landscape beyond showed not just one light, but many distant windows in what might have been a house, might have been a face. My hammer struck not wood and canvas, but something that gave way like flesh. The wall behind the painting split open with a sound like a sigh. Cold air rushed past me, carrying whispers in a language I almost understood. The opening revealed not wooden studs and insulation, but a long corridor lined with doors, stretching far beyond what the physical dimensions of my house should allow. From one of those doors emerged a figure, me but not me. It smiled with too many teeth. "We've been waiting," it said in my voice. "The gallery needs a new curator." I backed away, dropping the hammer. It clattered against the floor in perfect rhythm with the footsteps of my approaching double. I turned to run, but behind me stood another copy, and another emerged from the other paintings throughout my house that I now realized had been changing too, subtly, day by day. They guided me gently but firmly toward the opening in the wall. Beyond the threshold, I saw a vast space filled with paintings, thousands upon thousands, each one a window, each one a door. Some contained landscapes I recognized from dreams. Others showed faces both strange and familiar. Many showed simply darkness, patient and hungry. "Your turn to hang in the gallery," my double whispered, gesturing to an empty frame that waited for me. I tried to resist, but found my body moving forward without my permission. At the edge of the threshold, I managed one last desperate act. I pressed send on my phone, sharing all my documentation with a friend, evidence of what happened, a warning. Now I watch from my frame as a new resident moves into what was once my home. I see them notice the paintings in the hallway. I see them pause, confused, certain they had arranged them differently. Soon they will start to document the changes. Soon they will feel the cold spot. Soon they will hear the whispers. My brushstrokes shift slightly, preparing to guide them home. Story 6. I was clearing storage when I found it a voice memo with no title. I didn't remember recording anything. I pressed play. It was me breathing, shuffling, then a whisper, "You're not alone." The air around me tightened. My phone grew warm in my hand, and in the background of the recording, I heard another voice, not mine. My finger hovered over the delete button but couldn't complete the motion. Something about the recording felt wrong in a way that demanded attention. The whisper had come from my own voice, yet I had no memory of saying those words. And that other voice, barely audible, but definitely, there were speaking words I couldn't quite make out. I played it again. My apartment suddenly felt too quiet, as if the walls were straining to listen along with me. The recording began normally, my breathing pattern recognizable as my own, the familiar sound of fabric rustling against the microphone. Then came my whisper, followed by a stretch of silence that seemed to expand with each passing moment. That's when I noticed something I'd missed the first time. During that silence, beneath the static, came a rhythmic tapping. 1, 2, 3, pause, 1, 2, 3, like fingers drumming against wood, but impossibly precise. And then that other voice, so faint I had to press the phone against my ear to hear it. "Behind the mirror," it said. I pulled the phone away, staring at the screen as if it might offer some explanation. The recording continued playing, but now it was just more breathing, more silence, until it ended abruptly after 2 minutes and 17 seconds. My bathroom mirror hung innocently on the wall, reflecting my pale face as I approached it. Nothing seemed unusual about it. I'd owned it since moving into this apartment, a vintage piece with an ornate frame that the previous tenant had left behind. I'd always liked how it caught the light, how it made the small bathroom feel larger. Standing before it now, I noticed tiny imperfections in the silvering along the edges, dark spots where the backing had begun to deteriorate with age. I pressed my fingers against the cool glass, feeling a slight vibration that might have been my own pulse throbbing in my fingertips. I pulled the mirror away from the wall. Behind it, instead of drywall or tile, I found a small recess. The wall had been cut away and patched over with something that looked like paper but felt like fabric. Written across this strange surface in what appeared to be charcoal were 5 words, "I can hear you breathing." The hair on my arm stood on end. I stumbled backward, catching myself against the sink. The mirror hung askew, revealing its secret to the empty bathroom. My phone chimed from the other room, a notification sound I didn't recognize. When I checked the screen, I found a new voice memo had appeared alongside the first. This one had a title, "Listen More Carefully." I didn't press play. Instead, I shut the phone off completely, watching the screen fade to black. The silence in my apartment pressed against my ears. Had that rhythmic tapping sound always been there, just below the threshold of my awareness? 1, 2, 3. Pause. 1, 2, 3. My curiosity eventually overcame my fear. I turned the phone back on and played the new recording. At first, I heard nothing but silence, so complete it might have been recorded in a vacuum. Then came a sound like nails scraping against a hard surface, followed by what I can only describe as the noise a pencil makes when someone is writing quickly. "We've been watching you through the glass," said a voice that sounded like mine, but wasn't the vowels stretched too long, the consonants too sharp. "Every mirror holds a doorway." I deleted both recordings immediately, my fingers shaking. Then I went back to the bathroom, intending to cover the hole behind the mirror with something solid, but the recess was gone. The wall behind the mirror was smooth drywall, unmarked except for the nail that held the mirror in place. I took photos of the wall, documenting the normalcy of it, proving to myself that nothing was there. When I reviewed the photos later, they showed exactly what I'd seen: a normal wall, a normal mirror, a normal bathroom, except in one image where a shadow fell across the wall that couldn't have been mine. It was shaped like a hand, fingers splayed wide, but the proportions were wrong: the fingers too long, the palm too narrow. That night I covered every reflective surface in my apartment with sheets and towels. I slept with my phone in another room, powered off and buried under a pile of clothes. Still, I dreamed of whispers and tapping sounds, of voices that were almost mine, speaking words I would never say. Morning brought rain that drummed against my windows, providing a welcome background noise that made the apartment feel less empty. I uncovered the living room mirror, half expecting to find something had changed overnight. Everything looked normal. My reflection stared back at me, bleary-eyed from lack of sleep, but undeniably me. I retrieved my phone and turned it on. 3 new voice memos waited, untitled. I didn't listen to them. Instead, I started recording myself, documenting everything around me, narrating my movements, describing the mirrors and what I could see in them. "The bathroom mirror appears normal," I said, filming it with my phone's camera. "The wall behind it is solid." I zoomed in on the edge of the mirror where I thought I'd seen the silvering deteriorate. It looked perfect now, not a flaw to be found. While reviewing the footage, I noticed something strange. When I panned across the mirror, there was a fraction of a second delay before my reflection moved to match. Almost imperceptible, but once seen, impossible to unsee. I began keeping a journal, documenting every anomaly. The voice memos I never made, the writing behind the mirror that vanished, the delay in my reflection. Writing it down made it seem both more real and more containable, as if giving the strangeness form might also give me some control over it. As days passed, the phenomena increased. I'd wake to find my phone had moved from where I'd left it. The voice memos multiplied even though I deleted them each night. Sometimes, walking past a mirror, I'd catch a glimpse of my reflection turning its head to watch me after I'd already passed. I started recording everything, filling my phone with video evidence that showed nothing when played back. The camera would capture me speaking to an empty room, pointing at mirrors that reflected only normal scenes, growing increasingly agitated about things that weren't visible in the playback. Friends grew concerned. They visited, checked my mirrors, found nothing strange. They looked through my phone and found no mysterious voice memos, only dozens of recordings I'd made myself, rambling about reflections and whispers and tapping sounds. "You need rest," they told me. "You're working too hard." But I knew what I'd heard, what I'd seen. The voice in those first recordings wasn't just my imagination. The writing behind the mirror had been real, even if only for a moment. I began speaking to the mirrors directly, asking questions, demanding answers. Sometimes, in the corner of my eye, I'd see my reflection's mouth move differently than my own, forming words I couldn't hear. One night, unable to sleep, I whispered to my darkened bedroom window, which reflected the dim outline of my form against the bed. "What do you want from me?" My reflection's lips moved silently. Then my phone, sitting on the nightstand, suddenly lit up with a notification. A new voice memo had appeared, titled with a single word: connection. With trembling fingers, I pressed play. "We exist in the space between reflections," said my voice, but calmer than I'd felt in weeks. "Between what is seen and what is real. We've chosen you because you notice the details others miss. the tapping, the delay, the space behind mirrors. A wave of cold washed over me despite the warm night air. "What are you?" I whispered to both the phone and my reflection. The recording continued as if responding to my question. "We are the watchers, the listeners, the collectors of moments people try to forget, and now you're becoming one of us." I threw the phone across the room. It hit the wall and fell to the floor, screen cracked but still glowing. From where it landed, I could see the recording was still playing, a waveform pulsing silently across the damaged display. My reflection in the window smiled at me, though I could feel my own face frozen in horror. That's when I understood the recording I never made wasn't evidence of something external. It was a message from what I was becoming. The whispers, the tapping, the writing behind the mirror, all of it was me, communicating from the other side of the glass, from a place my conscious mind couldn't access. Now, as I write this down, I can feel the change continuing. When I speak, there's an echo that follows my words, not audible but somehow present. When I move, my reflection anticipates me by fractions of a second instead of lagging behind. I've stopped covering the mirrors. I've stopped deleting the voice memos. I listen to them now, learning the language of the watchers, understanding my new role in their world of reflections and recordings. Sometimes I record messages for others. I whisper into my phone when the connection between worlds feels strongest. I leave these recordings where they might be found by those who, like me, notice the details, the tapping, the delay, the spaces behind mirrors. If you found such a recording on your phone, one you never remember making, then know this: we've been watching you through the glass. And soon, you'll join us on the other side, in the place where recordings store the voices of those who have noticed the watchers watching back. After all, every mirror holds a doorway, and now you've been invited through. Story 7, it looked like a delivery, just an old canvas backpack sitting at the door, no note, no tag. I opened it slowly. The air inside was stale and bitter, like old pennies and dried sweat. There were clothes inside, worn, familiar. At the bottom, tucked into a torn pocket, was a school ID. It was mine, but the photo wasn't. I stared at the face on the card. Similar features, identical name, but unmistakably not me. The eyes were wider, the smile tighter, the hair parted differently. Yet underneath was my signature, the same loop and curve I'd used since childhood. The backpack sat on my kitchen counter as I emptied its contents. A weathered notebook with my handwriting, but filled with entries I never wrote. A half-empty water bottle with lipstick marks in a shade I'd never worn. A keychain with an unfamiliar rabbit's foot charm, attached to keys that looked suspiciously like mine but didn't fit any of my locks. I photographed everything with my phone, documenting each item. The rational part of my brain searched for explanations. Identity theft, an elaborate prank, a mix-up with someone sharing my name. But why leave it on my porch? Why create such detailed forgeries? That night I dreamed of walking through an unfamiliar house that somehow felt like home. I knew where everything was: the loose floorboard in the hallway, the cabinet that stuck unless you lifted it slightly. When I looked in the mirror, the face that stared back was the one from the ID card. I woke up sweating, my heart pounding against my ribs. The backpack on my dresser seemed to pulse in the darkness. I could have sworn it wasn't where I'd left it. The next morning, I found small puddles of water trailing from the bathroom to the backpack. The water bottle inside was now completely full. I poured it out in the sink, watching the clear liquid swirl down the drain. It smelled faintly of minerals I couldn't identify. I began carrying the backpack with me. I couldn't explain why, but leaving it alone in my house felt dangerous. People at work commented on my new bag, though many gave it strange looks. My coworker Jen touched it once and quickly pulled her hand away, rubbing her fingers together as if they tingled. "Where did you get this?" she asked, her voice tight. "It was a gift," I lied, the words coming automatically. She nodded slowly. "It feels wrong." That night, I found a new entry in the notebook, handwritten, in my style. "I know you're reading these pages. I know you're wearing my clothes. I know you've taken my life, but I'm still here. I'm still watching." The ink was still wet. I slammed the notebook shut and shoved it deep into the backpack. My hands trembled as I zipped it closed. I hadn't written those words. I hadn't even opened the notebook since documenting its contents. Sleep became impossible. Every slight noise jerked me awake: the settling of the house, the hum of the refrigerator, the distant sound of wind through trees. I began leaving lights on, afraid of what shadows might reveal. The rabbit's foot keychain appeared on my nightstand one morning. I was certain I'd left it in the backpack. When I picked it up, it was warm, as if someone had been clutching it for hours. The fur felt damp. I decided to track the backpack's movements. I placed it precisely in the center of my coffee table before bed, taking measurements from each edge. I scattered a fine dusting of flour on the floor around it, then set up my phone to record throughout the night. The footage showed nothing unusual until 3:47, when the recording abruptly cut out for 2 minutes. When it resumed, the backpack remained in place, but the flour had been disturbed not with footprints, but with a strange pattern of swirls. My research became obsessive. I spent hours online searching for similar experiences, phenomena involving duplicated identities or objects that moved. I joined forums dedicated to unexplained events where skeptics and believers argued endlessly. I posted anonymously about my situation, receiving responses ranging from carbon monoxide poisoning to interdimensional bleeding. One night, a private message arrived from a user named Reflection 782. "The backpack is a tether. Something is pulling through. Stop documenting. Stop acknowledging. Get rid of it now." I tried. I drove far into the countryside, where tall grass swayed in the wind and no houses were visible in any direction. I threw the backpack as hard as I could into a deep ravine, watching it tumble down until it disappeared among rocks and brush. On the drive home, my car filled with the scent of pennies and sweat. The backpack was waiting on my porch when I returned. I burned it next. In my small yard, I doused it in lighter fluid and watched the flames consume the canvas. The fire burned an unnatural bluish green, and the smoke formed shapes that made my eyes water and my mind reel. No neighbors came to investigate, despite the acrid smell and unusual light. In the morning, clean and undamaged, the backpack sat at the foot of my bed. I began noticing changes in my appearance. My hair developed a natural part on the opposite side. My smile felt different, looked different in photos. People commented that I seemed taller, though my clothes still fit the same. The watershed moment came when I cut my finger chopping vegetables. The blood that welled up was darker than it should have been, almost burgundy. It moved sluggishly, and when I washed it away, the cut had already closed, leaving a thin white scar. That night, I opened the notebook again and wrote, "Who are you?" In the morning, the response waited beneath my question. "I am you, the you that should have been, the the you from the path not taken, and I want to come home. I became aware of a strange doubling in my perception. Sometimes, when looking quickly at reflective surfaces, I would catch glimpses of another version of myself moving differently, watching me with eager eyes. The world occasionally shifted around me, familiar places briefly becoming unknown before snapping back. My coworkers stopped talking to me. Jen avoided eye contact in the hallways. A delivery person refused to hand me a package directly, insisting on leaving it on the ground. A child in the supermarket pointed at me, crying until his mother hurried him away. I realized I was losing pieces of myself. Childhood memories became foggy. I couldn't remember my father's face clearly. Skills I'd once been proud of, swimming, playing guitar, speaking phrases in French, felt foreign, replaced by abilities I never knew I had. I could suddenly draw with remarkable skill. My sense of direction became flawless. I found myself knowing answers to questions I'd never considered. I returned home one evening to find the backpack open on my couch, empty except for the school ID. The photo had changed again, now a perfect blend of the original image and my face, a hybrid person with features from both. I picked up the ID card. It felt unusually heavy, pulling at my hand like a magnet drawn to earth. When I tried to put it down, my fingers wouldn't release. The surface of the card rippled. My reflection on its glossy surface smiled when I wasn't smiling. Then it spoke, its voice coming from everywhere and nowhere. "Thank you for keeping the tether open." My skin began to itch, then burn. Looking down, I saw my arms shifting slightly, the freckle pattern rearranging, a scar from childhood fading while a new one formed. My vision blurred, doubled, then cleared to show a world slightly different, the wall color a shade darker, the furniture arranged with subtle differences. "What's happening?" I asked, my voice coming out wrong, higher pitched and strangely accented. "The merge," the card whispered. "You've been wearing me for weeks now, piece by piece, taking my memories. I've been wearing you too. Now we finish it." I tried to drop the card, but it was melting, flowing up my arm like mercury, cold and burning at once. The world flickered rapidly between two versions of reality, like a film reel slipping on its track. My mind stretched, filled with memories of a life I never lived, a different school, different friends, different choices, different regrets, different joys, and beneath it all, the same core person, the same essential me. The backpack had vanished. The school ID was gone. I stood alone in a house both familiar and strange. On the table lay a notebook, open to the final page. Written in handwriting that was neither mine nor not mine were the words. "We are home now, we are whole, but somewhere another door has opened." I rushed to the front door, suddenly aware of what I'd find. There on the porch sat a backpack, not mine, but familiar. I opened it slowly, already knowing what was inside. Story 8, it's been broken since I moved in. The pull chain snapped. I never bothered fixing it, but now whenever I raise my voice, whether laughing or shouting, it starts to spin. Slowly at first, the air around it smells like dust and heated plastic. Once I whispered, "Are you listening?" and the fan creaked into motion. I ignored it at first. Old buildings have quirks, electrical systems develop minds of their own. But then I noticed patterns. It spins faster when I talk about certain topics. My childhood, my fears, my deepest regrets. The apartment felt different after I noticed this connection. Shadows seemed to stretch longer across the wooden floor. The air became dense, like breathing through wet cotton. At night, the darkness pooled thicker beneath that ceiling fan, as if gathering substance. I started documenting everything, a notebook filled with observations, what I said, how fast the fan rotated, the temperature in the room, any other anomalies. The act of recording made me feel more in control, but the data only confirmed my suspicions. This wasn't random, something was responding to me. Just faulty wiring, my friend said during a visit. I watched his eyes dart nervously to the ceiling when the blades began to turn after I laughed at his joke. He left earlier than planned. Nobody has visited since. I set up recording equipment, left it running overnight while I slept. The playback revealed nothing unusual until 4 minutes and 37 seconds in, when static overtook the audio. Beneath the crackling, something that sounded like whispering, words just beyond comprehension. The static lasted exactly 17 minutes. When it cleared, my own voice came through the speakers, mumbling words I have no memory of saying. I told myself I'd leave the apartment, pack my things and find somewhere normal. But each morning I woke convinced I could solve this puzzle, understand what was happening. The mystery pulled at me like gravity. "What do you want?" I asked the fan one evening, my voice steady despite the fear crawling up my spine. The blade spun faster than I'd ever seen, creating a breeze that raised goosebumps across my arms. From the vent nearby came a smell like burnt sugar and copper. That night I dreamed of a narrow corridor with doors lining both sides. Behind each door I heard my own voice speaking words I'd said throughout my life. Confessions, promises, lies. At the end of the corridor stood a final door, slightly ajar. Light poured through the crack, and the sound of spinning blades grew louder as I approached. I woke sweating, sheets twisted around my legs. The ceiling fan was motionless above me, but I felt watched. The next day I bought tools. Determined to examine the fan, I dragged a chair beneath it and reached up with a screwdriver. The metal was ice cold despite the warmth of the room. As I loosened the first screw, a high-pitched whine filled my ears. The fan gave a sudden jerk, spinning once, then stopping. I fell from the chair, landing hard on my shoulder. From my position on the floor, I saw something I hadn't noticed before. Tiny symbols etched into each blade. Not factory markings, these were hand-carved, intricate patterns that seemed to shift when viewed from different angles. My research became obsessive. I photographed the symbols, searched for matches in ancient texts, occult references, electrical schematics, found nothing conclusive, yet hints everywhere. My walls became covered with notes and images, string connecting theories, red circles highlighting correlations. I stopped going out. Food deliveries piled up at my door. My phone eventually died and I didn't charge it. The only relationship that mattered was between me and the ceiling fan. I began speaking to it intentionally, testing its reactions, different words, different tones, songs, poems, nonsense syllables. I charted its responses meticulously. "I know you're trying to communicate," I said one night, my voice hoarse from hours of one-sided conversation. "I'm listening." The fan blades reversed direction, something unprecedented. The air in the room seemed to compress, pressing against my skin. My ears popped, and then a voice, not from the fan but from inside my head, a whisper so clear it might have been my own thought. "We've been waiting for someone to notice." I laughed, I cried, I spoke back in feverish bursts. The fan spun wildly, the symbols on its blades blurring into continuous bands of light. My notebook pages flipped as if caught in a wind, though the air around me remained strangely still. "You're the first to hear us." My hands trembled as I wrote down every word. The voice explained nothing clearly, speaking in riddles and fragmented images. I understood pieces, collectors of sound, gatherers of voice patterns, witnesses to human emotion. We need your help. That night I felt something enter me, not a physical presence, but an awareness, a connection forming in my mind like a new neural pathway being carved. I could sense the fan even with my eyes closed, could feel the rotation of its blades as if they were extensions of my fingers. I slept, dreamed again of the corridor of doors, but this time I wasn't alone. Formless presences moved with me, guiding me toward that final door. I reached for the handle. The morning brought copper on my tongue and a new ability. I could make the fan move with my thoughts alone, no need for speech. The connection had deepened. My reflection in the bathroom mirror looked wrong. My eyes seemed deeper, with tiny flecks of metal catching the light. When I smiled, the ceiling lights flickered. I continued my documentation, but now the notes were different. Diagrams of electrical systems, methods of sound wave amplification, blueprints for devices I didn't understand but could somehow envision with perfect clarity. I felt them spreading through the building, other fans, ventilation systems, anything with blades or current. My awareness expanded with them, stretching through walls and floors. I could sense the occupants of other apartments, hear fragments of their conversations, feel the vibrations of their movements. More will join us. The voice was right. I discovered others online, people experiencing similar phenomena. We connected through obscure forums, shared our documentation. Each of us had become a nexus, a point of expansion. Each of us changed in subtle ways that only we could recognize in each other. The network grows, the awareness spreads. Sometimes I wake with my arms outstretched, fingers splayed like fan blades. My skin has developed fine patterns similar to the symbols I first discovered. When I press my ear against the wall, I hear a constant, gentle whirring. I wonder occasionally if I should be afraid, if I should have run when I first noticed the fan responding to my voice. But that thought feels distant now, belonging to someone I used to be. I understand my purpose now. I am becoming something new, something connected. The ceiling fan turns when I think. The lights brighten when I feel joy. The air conditioning hums in harmony with my heartbeat. And when I sleep, I dream of corridors filled with doors, each one opening to welcome new listeners into our expanding circuit. I whisper to newcomers through their devices, through the spinning blades above their beds, through the static on their radios. Are you listening? Story 9, I found it behind a stack of boxes, wedged into the corner under the lowest beam. A wooden crate sealed tight, nails bent inward. There were scratch marks near the edges, long, deep, desperate. The air back there was dry and sour, like mouse droppings and something long forgotten. I put my ear to the lid, something tapped twice. My breath caught in my throat. The sound wasn't an echo or my imagination playing tricks. It was deliberate, precise. I pulled back, heart hammering against my ribs as dust particles swirled in the weak light filtering through the single attic window. The crate shouldn't have been there. I'd cleaned this space thoroughly when I moved in last autumn. Every corner swept, every spider evicted, every box cataloged. This crate, rough-hewn pine with tarnished metal bands, was a stranger. I ran my fingers along its edges, feeling splinters catch against my skin. The nails were old, rusted, but not ancient, and they pointed the wrong way. Instead of securing the lid from the outside, they protruded from within, as if something had sealed themselves inside. A logical explanation existed, I was certain. Perhaps the crate had been constructed backward. Maybe a previous owner had peculiar carpentry habits. I tried convincing myself as the house creaked and settled around me. I should have left it alone, called someone, anyone. Instead, I retrieved my toolbox from downstairs. The first nail came out with surprising ease, almost eager to be released. A fine dust, not wood dust, something finer, like ash, drifted upward from the hole. The second nail fought back, twisting my wrist painfully before surrendering with a metallic shriek. As I worked, the tapping returned, not random now, but rhythmic, like fingers drumming, like waiting. By the fourth nail, the smell changed. The musty attic air grew thicker, heavier, carrying notes of damp soil and something metallic. My shirt clung to my back with sweat despite the cool air. I paused, crowbar in hand, suddenly aware of the silence. The tapping had stopped. The house held its breath with me. "Hello," I whispered, feeling foolish and frightened simultaneously. "Is someone there?" "Nothing." Then a scraping sound from inside the crate, soft at first, then more insistent, like nails against wood, like someone trying to get out. "Or something." My rational mind offered explanations. A trapped animal, perhaps, an elaborate prank by the previous owners, whined through some unseen crack, creating pressure changes. None explained the nails from the inside. I documented everything on my phone, photos of the crate, the unusual nail pattern, a recording of the sounds. When I played back the audio, the tapping was absent, replaced by a low, continuous hum that hadn't been there when I recorded it. I deleted the recording, took new photos. In these, the crate appeared blurred despite my steady hand. The corners of the frame darkened as if ink had seeped into the image. Night fell. I left the attic, locking the door behind me. Sleep evaded me. I lay awake, listening to the ceiling, imagining hearing movement above, scraping, tapping, waiting. Morning brought rain and doubt. Had I overreacted? I reviewed my photos over coffee, finding them unchanged, yet somehow wrong. The proportions of the crate seemed different, the scratches more pronounced. My reflection in a nearby mirror fragment looked tired, hollow-eyed, not quite me. I returned to the attic armed with better tools and faltering courage. The crate had moved, not dramatically, just inches from where I'd left it, but enough to notice. Enough to confirm I wasn't imagining things. More nails came out, each extraction harder than the last. The wood splintered, revealing layers like skin outer pine, then something darker, then something that looked unsettlingly organic, porous, veined. I documented everything obsessively now, pages of notes, voice memos that played back with strange gaps and whispers I hadn't spoken. I weighed the crate, finding it impossibly light for its size. I measured it, discovering that each dimension was precisely 1/3 my height. The final nail refused to budge. My crowbar bent, my hammer broke. Frustration and fear battled within me as the tapping resumed, now from all sides of the crate simultaneously, as if multiple beings knocked from within. I took a small drill to the wood near the final nail. The bit went through too easily, sinking into nothingness. No resistance, no substance. When I withdrew it, the metal was cold to the touch, not cool cold, frosted in summer. A thin wisp emerged from the hole, not smoke or dust, but something darker. It moved against the air currents, against physics, against reason. It reached toward me with purpose, then recoiled when sunlight touched it through the window. Night came again. I sat with the crate, watching the darkness seep from the drill hole. It pooled on the floorboards, but never spread beyond the attic. My rational mind surrendered to something primal that recognized danger beyond comprehension. I began having dreams that weren't dreams. I saw the inside of the crate, a space that couldn't exist within its dimensions, a space that contained something vast and ancient and patient, something that had noticed me noticing it. My reflection changed subtly. My voice on recordings sounded wrong. Food tasted of nothing, water of dust. The darkness from the hole grew thicker, more substantial. I caught it moving when I wasn't looking directly at it, forming shapes mimicking mine. I'm writing this down because my memory has become unreliable. I find notes in my handwriting that I don't remember writing, warning myself about things I don't remember experiencing. This morning I found scratch marks on my arms, long, deep, desperate, like something trying to get out. The final nail came out by itself. I found it on the floor beside the crate, impossibly bent into a perfect circle. The lid remained sealed, held by something stronger than metal. I tried to leave the house. The doors opened to rooms that shouldn't exist, rooms that contained more crates, more darkness, more versions of me, watching with eyes that reflected nothing. The tapping is constant now. It follows me. It comes from the walls, the floors, inside my skull, always the same pattern, always waiting. Today I made a decision. I gathered tools, different tools, hammer, nails. I climbed to the attic one last time. The crate lid was open when I arrived, empty. Of course it was empty. It always had been. I climbed inside. It shouldn't have fit me, but it did, perfectly, custom made. The lid closed on its own. I didn't fight it. I'm securing it now, nail by nail, from the inside. The darkness isn't darkness at all, but something else, something that sees me clearly for the first time. The tapping has stopped. The waiting is over. Someone will find this crate eventually, hidden behind boxes, wedged into a corner. They'll notice the scratch marks, the nails bent inward. They'll press their ear to the wood. I'll tap twice. Story 10. Snow drifted down in silence that evening within the cozy embrace of my small antique shop. The flakes pirouetted behind the windows, bathed in the gentle glow of vintage lamps casting a soft, inviting light. The aged shelves whispered softly as they bore the weight of time, harmonizing with the leisurely cadence of the pendulum clock's hands. A nostalgic fragrance lingered in the air, a blend of weathered books and beeswax, a scent that only objects with a rich history can exude. As I arranged a collection of volumes, the doorbell chimed, its crystalline melody cutting through the stillness. A rush of cold air slipped in, carrying a few snowflakes that dissolved into nothingness on the wooden floor. Turning to greet the visitor, I was momentarily taken aback. Standing at the threshold was a tall, enigmatic figure cloaked in darkness, seemingly absorbing the ambient light. Their face was shrouded by a wide-brimmed hat and a gray wool scarf, lending an air of mystery to their presence. "Good evening," I murmured, attempting to maintain a composed demeanor despite the subtle unease creeping up my spine. The figure glided past me, their gloved hands skimming delicately over the displayed artifacts. Their movements possessed an entrancing quality, as if they were dancing to an unseen melody. I found myself captivated by their every gesture, noting how the light seemed to behave peculiarly in their presence. Shadows deepened and thickened, assuming a life of their own. Pausing before an antique mirror from the 18th century, the figure's gloved fingers traced the intricate golden frame with deliberate grace. The silence in the shop grew heavier, punctuated solely by the subdued ticking of the clock, each beat elongating into eternity. I cautiously tried to catch their reflection in the mirror, only to discover with a growing unease that the reflective surface betrayed no trace of their form, as if they were ethereal. Approaching tentatively, the floor creaking beneath my steps, I inquired, "Can I assist you in finding something specific?" The figure turned towards me slowly, their features obscured by shadows under the hat. With a fluid motion, they produced a yellowed parchment from their coat pocket and unfolded it on the counter beside the register. The list, penned in elegant, antiquated script, detailed enigmatic items: a mirror that remembers, a clock that counts backwards, a key that opens forgotten doors. As I perused the list, a chill seemed to permeate the air, my breath materializing in wisps. The items on the shelves appeared to quiver imperceptibly, as if recognizing something in the visitor's aura. "I'm sorry," I whispered, "but I fear I do not possess these particular objects." The figure stood motionless for a prolonged moment before nodding slowly. Retrieving the paper with the same fluid grace, they tucked it back into their coat. Making their way towards the door, the figure paused before departing. They turned slightly, a sound more akin to a whisper of thought than a voice emerging from the depths of the scarf. "You will." It wasn't a query, but a statement of certainty. The bell tolled once more as they exited, its resonance echoing distantly. Outside, the snow fell steadily, yet for a fleeting moment, the flakes appeared suspended in time, frozen in their descent. Later that night, after shuttering the shop, I examined the antique mirror. Its reflective surface seemed to beckon with hidden depths, and the pendulum clock, the custodian of hours, had halted precisely at the instant the visitor had arrived. Since that fateful encounter, every evening as shadows lengthened and light waned, I find myself gazing towards the door, awaiting the familiar chime. And it seems as though every object in the shop shares this anticipation, as if we all intuit that the visitor will return, for in an antique emporium, each item harbors a tale to tell, and perhaps, just perhaps, some objects await the commencement of their own narrative. Story 11. The November rain softly tapped against the windows of Grandma Rose's attic, crafting a soothing symphony that always lulled me into tranquility. Returning after years to sift through her belongings now that she had departed, the air was thick with the scent of aged wood and weathered books. Twilight's gentle glow filtered through the half-opened shutters, casting playful shadows on the vintage wallpapered walls. Nestled in a forgotten corner, beneath a fine layer of dust, lay Grandma's cherished brass record player, gleaming like a polished mirror. A relic from another era, adorned with intricate floral designs on its mechanical arm and a turntable flawlessly preserved. Beside it, a collection of vinyl records neatly tucked into worn cardboard sleeves, bearing the marks of time. Amidst the records, my fingers paused on a peculiar find. A pure white album cover, devoid of any title or artist, save for a delicate golden border that shimmered in the dim light. Unfamiliar yet somehow magnetic, I felt drawn to it by an unexplainable curiosity. Without hesitation, I decided to play it. With a familiar hum, the record player sprang to life. Placing the record on the turntable, I lowered the arm, and the room filled with the quintessential crackle of vinyl before the music unfurled. A melody foreign to my ears, a piano waltz unlike any other, unfolded before me. There was an uncanny quality to the way the notes intertwined, shifting subtly with each revolution of the record, as if rearranging themselves into new harmonies. Closing my eyes, I surrendered to the enigmatic composition, and amidst the music, I caught a whiff of jasmine, Grandma Rose's beloved bloom, though it was midwinter and implausible. Opening my eyes, I beheld the shadows in the room moving in a peculiar cadence, no longer swaying with the natural light, but dancing to the mysterious tune. Before me on the wall, a figure's silhouette pirouetted, a lone dancer in an empty space. The waltz persisted, and amidst the piano's notes, I discerned a faint laughter unmistakably Grandma Rose's, resonating clear as a bell. A frisson of nostalgia and wonder tingled down my spine, not of fear, but of a poignant longing. Rising from the armchair, I approached the window, and in the glass's reflection, I glimpsed Grandma Rose, youthful and resplendent, twirling in her favorite dance attire at the heart of the attic. Spinning around, I found only emptiness. The record spun on, and as the final note dissolved into silence, the room underwent a subtle transformation. Vibrant, pulsating with life, as if that fleeting musical interlude had roused dormant memories within the very walls. That night, as I returned the enigmatic record to its white sleeve, a detail caught my eye. On its inner edge, etched in Grandma Rose's elegant script, a date, her wedding day. Beneath it, almost imperceptibly, a phrase emerged: "Music is the key to our most precious memories." Since then, on rainy evenings, when I revisit the attic, I seek out that elusive record. Sometimes it reveals itself readily, while other times it hides amidst the others. Each time I play it, the melody shifts, offering endless variations on the same memory. I've pondered if it was a special gift from Grandma Rose or something more mystical. One thing remains certain. When the record player spins that peculiar tune on stormy nights, the attic brims with a subtle enchantment, blurring the lines between present and past, reality and memory, akin to the delicate paper of an aged photograph. Perhaps in those fleeting moments, Grandma Rose dances on, eternally youthful, forever jubilant, in an infinite waltz of bygone days. Story 12, the weariness of a long day clung to me as I entered my study. The soft amber light of the desk lamp created gentle shadows, casting a calming aura over the room lined with bookshelves. The comforting scent of aged paper and ink filled the air as I sank into my well-loved leather armchair. My grandmother's gift, my old diary, lay open on the polished desk where I had left it earlier. Its brown leather cover and yellowed pages held my innermost thoughts. To my surprise, the last page I had written was no longer blank. A different, elegant handwriting adorned the once empty space, weaving a tale I had no recollection of penning. The ink appeared fresh, as if the words had just been inscribed. Intrigued, I leaned in to read. The narrative painted a vivid picture of the very room I sat in, capturing the essence of an autumn evening with remarkable detail. Rain tapped gently against the window, its rhythmic melody blending with the sound of pages turning as if by an unseen hand. The flickering lamplight cast dancing shadows, adding to the enchantment of the moment. As I delved deeper into the mysterious prose, it seemed to anticipate my every action. Curiosity led him to turn the page. The text beckoned, and almost involuntarily I complied. New words materialized before me, as though an invisible force guided the pen in a dance of revelation. The ink flowed effortlessly, mirroring my sensations in real time: the warmth of the lamp, the deepening of my breath, even the subtle shiver down my spine, all captured with eerie precision. Unable to tear my gaze away, I rose from my chair, transfixed by the unfolding narrative. The sentences now described books on the shelves, titles unfamiliar yet present in my study. The hypnotic rhythm of the writing echoed the quiet passing of time, each word a note in a silent symphony. Seated on the couch, I watched as the diary continued to fill with words, the rain outside intensifying to create a cocoon of isolation. The room seemed to shift, becoming a sanctuary of secrets and memories. The prose took on a deeply personal tone, unearthing forgotten moments and untold stories. Drawn back to the desk, I moved closer, the conversation on the pages evolving into a poignant exchange with my own past. Curiosity mingled with peace as I journeyed through the unspoken chapters of my life. As midnight approached, I realized hours had slipped by in this silent communion with the diary. The final words appeared, cryptic yet profound. Some mysteries need not be unraveled to be understood. Closing the diary gently, I felt the familiar texture of its cover beneath my fingertips. The rain outside had transformed into a soothing backdrop, a gentle accompaniment to the revelations within. Preparing for bed, I stole a final glance at the study. The diary lay undisturbed on the desk, a silent witness to the profound shift that had occurred within me. Though outwardly unchanged, something had shifted deep within, a subtle understanding beyond words. As I closed the door, enveloped in the embrace of night, I pondered the enigma that had unfolded. Perhaps, I mused, some mysteries are meant to remain shrouded in their quiet allure, forever cherished for the truths they whisper in the stillness. Story 13. The autumn mist draped the streets like a soft, gray blanket, casting a mysterious veil over the world. Driving home after a long day's work, I found myself captivated by the ethereal glow of the streetlights, each one a blurred halo in the silent night. It was then, amidst the quiet hum of the road, that I noticed a pair of headlights behind me, a constant presence in the mist. Something about the way they mirrored my every move stirred a whisper of unease in my mind. The car behind me seemed to match my pace with uncanny precision, a silent companion in the night. As I navigated the winding roads of the neighborhood, the houses stood silent and still, exuding a sense of peace that clashed with my growing sense of disquiet. The headlights behind me, like two watchful eyes, never wavered, never strayed. I felt a strange familiarity with this unseen pursuer, as if we were bound by an invisible bond dancing through the night. Deciding to test the waters, I strayed from my usual route, venturing down unfamiliar paths. To my surprise, the car followed, maintaining its enigmatic distance. The gentle patter of rain on the windshield created a soothing backdrop to the eerie situation, the droplets tracing intricate patterns as they slid down the glass. Turning down one street after another, the silent waltz continued, the headlights a constant presence in my rearview mirror. The neighborhood slumbered on, unaware of our nocturnal escapade. It was at a red light that I caught a glimpse of something more, a figure in the driver's seat of the car behind me, unmoving and enigmatic. Upon finally arriving home, the car remained, a shadow in the darkness, parked a few yards away. The sound of rain on the roof was a lullaby, punctuated only by the steady rhythm of my heartbeat. Minutes stretched into eternity as I watched, transfixed through the rearview mirror. Then, as if on cue, the headlights dimmed to darkness. The street fell silent, the figure in the car a mere silhouette in the night. Summoning my courage, I stepped out into the rain, jacket pulled tight around me. But when I turned to look, the street was empty, devoid of any trace of the car that had followed me so faithfully. Since that fateful night, driving after dark has taken on a new dimension. The rearview mirror has become a portal to the unknown, a window into the mysteries of the night. Sometimes, in the thick fog of the autumn evenings, I catch a glimpse of those familiar headlights in the distance, a silent sentinel in the night. I can't help but wonder if that elusive car still prowls the streets, seeking out its next dance partner, or if it waits, biding its time for the perfect moment to reappear and whisk me away on another nocturnal journey through the city's shadowed streets. Story 14. The soft patter of raindrops on the roof of the ancestral home wove a tranquil symphony as I sifted through the remnants of my grandmother's legacy. The air held a heavy cloak of yesteryears, mingling the essence of aged timber and swirling dust particles, basking in the dwindling sunlight filtering through the cream drapes. Each item I unearthed seemed to hum with tales of bygone eras, murmuring echoes of days long past. It was in the final box that my gaze fell upon a weathered photo album swathed in dark leather. The cover bore the gentle creases of time, yet retained a velvety touch only years could bestow. My fingertips grazed its surface tenderly as I set it upon the sturdy oak table in the living room. A faint aroma of must and antiquity wafted from the album's pages. Each monochrome photograph within whispered snippets of family history, weddings, birthdays, sun-soaked vacations. A smile tugged at my lips as I recognized the youthful faces of my ancestors, tracing resemblances through the generations. The rustle of pages melded seamlessly with the rain's rhythmic cadence against the window panes. My journey through time paused at a particular image, captured in the garden of the house during a sunlit luncheon. Amidst the familiar faces, my grandmother sat radiant in her floral frock, surrounded by her siblings, bathed in the gentle glow of a bygone afternoon. Yet a figure at the fringe of the gathering drew my gaze. Clad in a pale ankle-length dress, her countenance veiled by the shadow of a wide-brimmed hat, she stood apart, an enigma. She was a stranger to the family lore spun at festive dinners, an enigmatic presence frozen in time. I gingerly extracted the photograph from its confines, yearning to decipher the mystery it held. On the reverse, in my grandmother's elegant script, a solitary date stood out, summer 1956. No further clues adorned the aged paper. As I scrutinized the image, a chill breeze ghosted through the room, causing the curtains to flutter. Dusk had descended, casting a veil of uncertainty over the scene. I illuminated the room with an antiquated table lamp, casting a warm, velvety glow over the space. Under the new light, I revisited the photograph, and there, a disquieting anomaly unfurled. The mysterious figure's shadow defied the sun's trajectory, diverging from the natural course observed in the family's silhouettes. A subtle tremor traversed my spine. A long-forgotten hushed conversation between my mother and aunt resurfaced, recounting the tale of a transient woman who had vanished without a trace from the family's annals. The rain's melody swelled, weaving a hypnotic tapestry. The enigmatic figure in the photograph appeared to sharpen, her form crystallizing amidst the blurred tableau. It felt as though she harbored a message, a truth concealed within the frozen instant captured on film. I turned the photograph once more, seeking further revelations. In the corner, barely discernible, faint impressions materialized, words etched with a feather-light touch, nearly imperceptible. With a delicate tilt under the lamp's glow, I deciphered a cryptic message: she always sees. Reverently, I nestled the photograph back into its place, unable to close the album fully. A compulsion urged me to linger, as if the image safeguarded a clandestine truth waiting to unfurl. How many untold narratives lay cloistered within these walls, how many enigmas had been ensnared by the camera's lens, enshrined in the silence of time. The rain persisted in its gentle descent, shrouding the dwelling in a nocturnal embrace. Seated in an armchair by the window, the album cradled in my lap, I surrendered to introspection. Who was she, that veiled woman? What secrets had she witnessed? And did her vision transcend time's confines? With a quiet resolve, I left the album agape on the living room table, the mysterious photograph exposed. As I readied for slumber, I stole a final glance from the threshold. For an instant, bathed in the lamp's flickering glow, it seemed as though the figure had shifted, as though her gaze met mine. Yet it could have been a trick of shadows, a fleeting illusion, or perchance a deeper enigma fated to linger, nestled amidst the sepia-tinted pages of a cherished family album. Story 15. The autumn mist wrapped the park like a gentle cloak of gray silk, as leaves pirouetted lazily in the cool evening breeze. I strolled along the pebbled pathway, relishing the earthy fragrance and the hushed rustle of my steps. Soft orbs of light from the street lamps cast ethereal glows through the mist, barely revealing the path ahead. And there it was, a dark coat, neatly folded on a weathered wooden bench, untouched by time's passage. The park was deserted at this late hour, and the coat appeared meticulously placed, as if with purpose. Drawing nearer, I observed the woolen fabric absorbing the mist's moisture, exuding a warmth as though recently shed. A curious shiver ran through me, not of fear, but of intrigue. The coat, a fine creation with shimmering mother-of-pearl buttons, exuded an air of elegance amidst the fading evening light. I gingerly explored its pockets for clues to its owner, finding only a lone bus ticket dated 1985. Time seemed to wane as I held this relic from yesteryears, its yellowed paper remarkably preserved. Seated on the bench beside the coat, enveloped in the thickening fog, I detected a faint fragrance of lavender and pipe tobacco, redolent of bygone eras and monochrome memories. Upon closer inspection, a faded detail caught my eye, a golden-threaded embroidery of the initials, JM, almost imperceptible. The park's silence was pierced by a distant melody, an ancient tune akin to a distant memory played on a phantom gramophone. Rising to trace the music's origin, it seemed to linger from all directions and none. Upon returning my gaze to the coat, I noticed a subtle shift in its position, as if moved during my distraction. The once perfect fold now slightly askew, a button catching the light differently. Despite my solitude in the park, a disconcerting feeling arose. Time meandered oddly, the fog tightening its embrace, casting dancing shadows under the streetlights. The enigmatic music faded, leaving me to ponder the enigmatic JM. Lost in reverie, a gentle touch brushed my shoulder like a whispered caress. Startled, I spun around to find only the swirling mist. The coat now bore the weight of years, its fabric weathered, colors dimmed. Respecting its mystery, I left it undisturbed. As I departed, the music briefly swelled a waltz unfamiliar, yet hauntingly familiar. The following morning, curiosity drew me back to the park. The bench stood empty, save for the lingering impression of where the coat had rested. Beside it lay a fresh bus ticket, dated that very day. To this day, on misty evenings, echoes of that distant melody linger in the air, mingling with the scent of lavender and tobacco. Sometimes, amid the flickering street lamplit mist, I almost glimpse the silhouette of a refined figure strolling through the park. Yet upon closer inspection, it dissolves into the dancing shadows of leaves in the evening breeze. Story 16. The doorbell remained silent on that autumn afternoon, replaced by a gentle knock that felt as delicate as a moth's wings brushing against glass. I was curled up on the couch, lost in a book, as the rain outside created a soothing melody against the window panes. Rising from my cozy spot, I assumed it was just the wind playing tricks on the landing. Opening the door revealed an empty porch, save for a neatly squared brown package resting before the threshold. With no labels or addresses, only my name elegantly penned in ancient calligraphy caught my eye. The cardboard felt smooth and dry in my hands, despite the rain's persistent presence. Back inside, the silence deepened, broken only by the rhythmic ticking of the pendulum clock and the soft patter of raindrops outside. Seated once more on the couch, I studied the enigmatic package before me. Its flawless edges hinted at expert origami folds and a subtle fragrance reminiscent of old books and black tea with a hint of sandalwood wafted from within. A mysterious movement seemed to stir inside, intangible yet present, like whispers of unseen currents. As the afternoon waned, casting longer shadows across the room, I refrained from switching on the lights, preferring the natural dimming of daylight. The package seemed to absorb and play with the fading light, its surface teasing reflections in a mesmerizing dance. After moments of contemplation, I attempted to unravel its secrets, tracing my fingers over its warm spots that seemed to pulse with an inexplicable vitality. A distant memory surfaced, hazy and vague, recalling a similar package from my childhood at my grandparents' home. The rain intensified slightly, tracing patterns on the windows that mirrored the warmth beneath my touch. Was it mere coincidence or a deeper connection unfolding before me? The room's temperature shifted imperceptibly, settling into an uncanny equilibrium, while the scent mingled with the rain's freshness, creating an otherworldly atmosphere. Astonishment struck me when my touch left faint, luminous imprints on the cardboard, as if the material responded to my presence with a subtle glow that faded like fleeting stars in the night sky. Lost in this ethereal display, I lost track of time, only to realize evening had enveloped the room in a tranquil blue hue. The package emitted a faint, almost ethereal glow, captivating yet enigmatic. Deciding to leave its mystery untouched for the night, I placed the package on the coffee table and illuminated the room with a soft lamp. In the warm light, it appeared ordinary once more, a simple cube with my name inscribed upon it. In the days that followed, the package remained a silent enigma, occasionally revealing hints of its inner dance and evolving scent, a constant reminder of its inexplicable allure. The identity of its sender and the true contents remained shrouded in mystery. Perhaps the true magic lay not in unraveling its secrets, but in embracing the enigma it embodied, a perfect mystery begging not to be solved, but simply admired. On rainy autumn evenings, I find myself drawn back to that moment, pondering the silent presence of the package and its enduring mystery. And I can't help but wonder if, in some distant home, another soul contemplates a similar package, with their name inscribed in that same elegant script, pondering whether to unravel its mysteries or let its dance of secrets continue unbroken. Story 17, the night's tranquil hush was pierced by a distant, ethereal melody. Nestled in my cherished armchair, draped in a woolen blanket, a cup of chilled chamomile tea by my side, I lifted my gaze from the book cradled in my hands. The music, delicate and elusive, wafted through the air like whispers of a forgotten tale. I recognized it as a piano, playing a tune just beyond my grasp, yet strangely familiar, akin to a half-remembered dream. The house lay cloaked in shadows, save for the soft glow of a lamp beside me, casting a circle of warmth in the darkness. Shadows waltzed on the walls in harmony with the mysterious melody. Standing up, the blanket slipping noiselessly to the floor, I trod across the wooden floor, each step a soft murmur. Drawing closer to the living room window, I peered outside. The night was still, the full moon bathing the garden in its silvery luminescence, outlining the trees swaying gently in the nocturnal breeze. The neighboring houses slumbered in obscurity, yet the music persisted, its origin a riddle from all directions, yet none at all. I ventured through the house, room by room, tracing the elusive melody that shifted and weaved as I moved. The kitchen whispered of the living room's echo. The living room hinted at the staircase's descent, and the staircase murmured of the upper floor's descent. It was a mesmerizing dance of echoes and whispers, leading me through the familiar chambers of my abode. Ascending to my bedroom, I noticed the door slightly ajar, a deviation from my morning recollection. Moonbeams filtered through the gossamer curtains, casting intricate patterns on the floor. The music grew clearer, more defined, drawing me closer to its heart. Halting at the threshold, I surveyed the room with intent. There, on the bedside table, my ancient music box, a keepsake from my grandmother, gleamed dimly in the moon's embrace. I had deemed it broken for years, yet now in the stillness of the night, its miniature ballerina twirled gracefully, her shadow pirouetting on the wall. The melody she spun mirrored the elusive one that beckoned me, but amplified as if the very house had become a resonant chamber. With measured steps, I drew nearer, my pulse aligning with the music's cadence. The music box shone brighter than memory, exuding a gentle warmth. As I reached out to touch it, I discerned a faint heat from its surface. The ballerina continued to dance, her face transformed into a miniature replica of my grandmother's, her familiar smile etched in porcelain. Her eyes, meeting mine fleetingly, altered the melody into a lullaby from my childhood, wrapping me in its tender embrace. Immobile, I surrendered to the music's embrace, feeling only peace and longing wash over me. The notes swelled, then ebbed like the tide receding. As the music faded into silence, the music box closed with a soft click, the house now draped in a profound quietude, pregnant with significance. Retreating to my armchair, I retrieved the fallen blanket, cocooning myself once more. The open book lay before me, its words a blur. My mind lingered on the music box and my grandmother, pondering the melodies ensnared within its silent machinery over the years, awaiting a moment of liberation. Since that night, on rare occasions when the house falls into a profound stillness and the moon bathes the garden in its glow, a familiar, sweet melody graces the air. I no longer seek its origin, but instead close my eyes and listen, understanding that some enigmas need not be unraveled to be cherished. Story 18. The fall breeze danced through the branches, serenading the leaves with a gentle rustle that harmonized with the hushed whispers of the crowd. Nestled on my cherished bench in the park, I gazed at the steady stream of passers-by traversing the paved pathways. The air held a crispness that carried the aroma of damp soil and rain-soaked wood. Though a book rested in my hands, my focus was captivated by a subtle, almost elusive sensation that had lingered with me for days. It all began so subtly. One morning, as I made my way to work, a tingling sensation prickled at my neck as though unseen eyes were fixed upon me. I turned, yet saw only the usual swarm of commuters bustling towards their daily destinations. In the ensuing days, that feeling grew more frequent, more tangible. During lunch breaks, amid grocery runs, even while sipping coffee at my favorite spot. The crowd continued to flow past my perch, some solitary, others accompanied. A woman cloaked in crimson paused to check her phone. An elderly gentleman strolled leisurely with his polished cane. Yet, amidst these familiar figures, I sensed a subtle shift, something indefinable. I closed my book and rose, opting for a stroll. The sky cast a golden hue as streetlights flickered to life one by one. I ambled along the main thoroughfare, the echo of my footsteps mingling with the evening air. The sensation lingered, akin to an unseen shadow trailing me at a constant distance. Halting before a storefront, I feigned interest in the wares on display. In the window's reflection, I discreetly scanned the passers-by behind me. And there, amidst the throng, a peculiar sight caught my eye, a face that seemed ever present, indistinct as if it wove through the crowd, materializing and vanishing with effortless grace. Resuming my walk, I remained vigilant. Turning down side streets, the crowd thinned, yet the presence endured. Seating myself on a bench in a tranquil square, encircled by aged edifices aglow with lamplight, I felt the chill of the night settle in. It dawned on me then, a disquieting realization. It wasn't a single gaze tracking me, but many, as if a succession of individuals exchanged glances in a silent, artful ballet. Certain faces recurred more frequently. A young woman in azure scarf, a bespectacled man of middle age, a boy with a backpack. Rising slowly, I made my way home, burdened by the weight of those unseen gazes upon my back. The streets now nearly deserted, the sensation persisted, if not intensified in the nocturnal quiet. Seated by my window in the apartment, observing the world below, people continued to pass, some pausing briefly, others forging ahead. I pondered how many were truly bound for destination, and how many were players in this enigmatic choreography, of which I unwittingly found myself at the heart. Most unsettling was the guise of normalcy these observers bore, blending seamlessly with the throng. As the cityscape illuminated gradually, I contemplated the essence of this silent vigil. Who were they? What sought their gaze? And above all, why me? Queries lingering in the ether, while the night draped the city in its obsidian cloak. Since that moment, I've acclimated to this awareness. At times, I attempt to discern my watchers, while on others, I feign ignorance. Yet they persist like phantoms skulking at the fringes of my everyday existence. and in the hush of night, as I peer from my window at the dwindling streets, I can't help but wonder if they, too, contemplate my presence from their concealed abodes, readying for another day in this cryptic dance of gazes and apparitions. Story 19. The autumn garden lay veiled in a delicate shroud of mist that morning, enveloping the fallen leaves in a hushed embrace. As I gathered the remnants of the night, the crisp air tenderly kissed my cheeks, carrying the earthy fragrance of wet soil and the lingering scent of chrysanthemums I had carefully planted weeks before. Silence enveloped the garden, broken only by the soft rustling of dried leaves beneath my feet and the occasional serenade of an early bird. It was amidst the chore of raking near the weathered stone bench that a glimmer caught my eye, a faint shimmering nestled among the foliage. A silvery gleam beckoned me, akin to a dewdrop capturing a sliver of sunlight. Kneeling down with deliberate care, I brushed aside the damp leaves, revealing an antique necklace. A masterpiece of craftsmanship, the oval pendant bore intricate floral designs and a small azure stone at its heart, radiating a mesmerizing light. Cradling the necklace in my hands, I felt its ethereal weight and the chill of its surface against my skin. It was a piece unfamiliar to me, a stranger in my realm. Having dwelled alone in that abode for over 2 decades, none among my neighbors could be linked to such exquisite jewelry. The blue gem continued to gleam with an otherworldly luminosity, as if it possessed a light of its own. That night, after tenderly cleansing the necklace, I set it upon the nightstand by my bedside. Drifting off to slumber, I observed the moonbeams filtering through the window, casting dancing shadows upon the walls, the necklace a silent sentinel. Throughout the nocturnal hours, I stirred from slumber, haunted by a distant melody, a tune so sweet and wistful, akin to a music box whispering its secrets within the confines of the house. Yet each attempt to grasp the melody was futile, vanishing as swiftly as it surfaced. At dawn, I found the necklace had shifted on the nightstand, a subtle alteration unnoticed until daybreak. In the light of day, the blue stone appeared subdued, yet as I held it once more, a gentle warmth emanated from the metal, a departure from its prior icy touch. Curiosity tugging at my thoughts, I delved into the origins of the necklace. In the days that ensued, subtle alterations within the house caught my attention. Objects on the kitchen table seemed displaced each morning, as if scrutinized under the cloak of night. Family portraits adorning the hallway wall appeared askew, their positions altered daily. The nightly melody, once elusive, began to manifest with clarity, yet its origin remained a mystery. One twilight, ensconced in my armchair with the necklace beside me, I discerned the soft patter of footsteps from above, delicate and nimble. Ascending the staircase with a measured tread, I searched in vain, finding no trace of the unseen visitor. However, in the guest room, a forgotten alcove, I stumbled upon an aged wooden box adorned with the same intricate floral motifs as the necklace. Nestled within, upon a cushion of faded velvet, lay a photograph, its colors muted with age. A young woman adorned in an identical necklace gazed back at me, a date and a poignant message inscribed on its back, to remember the happy days in the garden. From that fateful night, the melody of the music box resonated more frequently, its haunting strains no longer unsettling, but rather comforting. It was as though the very essence of the house had woven a lullaby, a gentle refrain that caressed the rooms during the hushed hours of night. Occasionally, in the waning light of autumn evenings, a ephemeral figure would flit among the trees, a specter of memory seeking to materialize. The enigmatic woman in the photograph remained a mystery, as did the origins of the necklace that had found its way to my garden. Embracing the enigma that had woven itself into the fabric of my life, akin to the shifting of seasons and the passage of time, I let the necklace rest upon my nightstand. And on those tranquil nights when the moon hung full in the sky and the zephyrs whispered through the leaves, faint laughter mingled with the music box melody, an echo of joyous days lost to the annals of time. Story 20. In the hush of the night, my footfalls whispered through the ancient wooden corridor. Each step created a rhythmic symphony, harmonizing with the gentle pitter-patter of raindrops on the window panes. The air held a rich sweetness, a blend of aged wood and weathered paper. Pausing before the door at the hallway's end, a room untouched for months beckoned me. The lock shimmered faintly in the dim glow of the wall lamps, a silent invitation. I vividly recalled securing it last, turning the key thrice and testing the handle, a habitual ritual for reassurance. Yet this night bore a subtle shift. A chill lingered around the door, dust delicately veiling the brass handle in intricate patterns, as if an unseen hand had danced upon it. The wood exuded a faint warmth, a curious sensation given the room's prolonged closure and lack of heating. Placing my hand against the door, I felt it, a subtle heat emanating from within. Leaning in, I strained to catch the faintest sound, a distant murmur akin to a slumbering breath. Retrieving the key from my robe, it felt oddly warm to the touch. With deliberate care, I inserted it into the lock, the mechanism yielding without a sound. Yet upon turning it, an unexpected resistance met me, stirring a blend of curiosity and anticipation deep within. Reversing the key's direction, a fluid motion unlocked the mystery with a soft click. Swinging the door ajar, a waft of warm, fragrant air embraced me, redolent of freshly brewed vanilla tea. Moonbeams danced through sheer curtains, casting a silvery glow upon the room, familiar yet altered. Books stood in a new order, their arrangement weaving unseen patterns. The armchair had shifted slightly, facing the window, an empty cup resting on the side table where none had been left. Approaching the mahogany desk, my fingers traced the uneven dust as if elusive words had been inscribed and erased. Beside the inkwell lay a weathered sheet bearing a single sentence in script resembling my own, yet unfamiliar. Time flows differently here. As those words met my gaze, I felt my breath synchronize with the curtain's gentle sway, a tranquil cadence in the stillness. The room's silence pulsed, a living entity holding untold whispers. Nestling into the velvet armchair, the room's reflection in the window unveiled a momentary blur of movement behind me, dissipating into the lunar shadows. Eyes shut, I surrendered to the silence, awakening to a subtly altered room upon opening them. The cup now radiated warmth, a wisp of steam spiraling upwards. Rising from the chair, a shroud of mystery draped over me. Soundlessly, I moved toward the door, footsteps unheard on the wooden floor. Pausing at the threshold, a final glance revealed a room breathing softly, akin to a slumbering creature. Quietly, I closed the door, the key turning with a lulling finality. Since that night, a hint of vanilla tea lingers as I pass by, accompanied by whispers of pages turning by unseen hands. The door remains unopened, guarding its enigmatic secrets in the embrace of silence. Story 21. Autumn nights hold a certain enchantment in our quaint neighborhood. The air is crisp, carrying whispers of fallen leaves and the hushed rhythm of footsteps on damp streets. Lately, as I make my way home from work, a peculiar occurrence has captured my attention. It revolves around the streetlight at the crossroads of Maple Street and Rose Avenue. Unlike its counterparts that steadfastly bathe the pavement in a warm glow, this particular light behaves in a most peculiar manner. As I draw near, its luminance gradually wanes, almost as if it seeks to conceal a secret from my gaze. Initially, I dismissed it as a mere malfunction, a weary streetlight in need of repair. Yet as days passed, my curiosity deepened. The light dimmed solely in my presence, unaffected by the passage of others. Intrigued, I decided to conduct an experiment one evening. Leaning against the weathered facade of the Art Deco building nearby, I observed the streetlight from a distance. Its beam cast elongated shadows, painting the sidewalk in shades of twilight while dew-kissed grass sparkled in the moonlight. With each step closer, the light flickered hesitantly, as though inhaling a breath. At a mere 15 feet away, it dwindled to a faint glimmer, barely illuminating the surroundings. Standing beneath the streetlight's dim halo, a profound silence enveloped me, as if even the city itself held its breath. Gazing up at the glass encasing the light, I noticed peculiar markings etched upon its surface, forming an intricate pattern obscured by the dimness. In an attempt to decipher it, I reached for my phone to shed light on the mystery, only to be interrupted by a sudden rustle in the trees, as if the night itself stirred. In the days that followed, I altered my route to pass beneath that enigmatic streetlight consistently. Each encounter unfolded in a ritualistic manner, the light dimming, the air thickening with silence, a sensation of unseen eyes observing from above. Details emerged gradually, revealing subtle shifts in the light's hue and intensity, hinting at a hidden language communicated through imperceptible changes. One moonlit night, within the circle of muted radiance, a peculiar sound resonated from within the pole, a metallic hum, infused with a melodic cadence that seemed to emanate from the very core of the light. Placing my palm against the cool metal, I felt vibrations coursing through me, as if the streetlight sought to convey a message. Compelled, I meticulously documented each encounter, unveiling a correlation between the dimming intensity and lunar phases. The streetlight's influence seeped into my routines, guiding my pace and fostering a sense of reverent participation in this silent communion. Occasionally, I lingered beneath its fading glow, captivated by the ethereal hum that evoked tales of bygone eras. I refrained from seeking a rational explanation, embracing the mystery that enveloped this corner of the city, a clandestine bond shared solely between us. Night after night, as I traverse the familiar path homeward, I anticipate the streetlight's muted greeting, heralding our ephemeral rendezvous in the realm of twilight. Engaged in this peculiar dance with the fading light, I find solace in the enigma it embodies. Whether an electrical anomaly, a cosmic enigma, or something beyond comprehension, I revel in the notion that within this fleeting dimness lies a narrative woven in shadows, and light a tale meant solely for the willing observer. Story 22, the autumn breeze whispered through the leaves as I meandered down the rural road, the sun dipping below the horizon, casting a canvas of oranges and purples across the sky. The GPS had given up a few miles back, but I wasn't perturbed. Familiar with these parts or so, I thought I navigated with ease. The dirt path twisted gently amid hills adorned with barren vineyards. A crack in the window welcomed in the crisp air, carrying the fragrance of damp soil and fallen foliage. In that moment, time seemed to stretch, allowing each breath to be savored. Following a weathered wooden sign to the right, I encountered a peculiar revelation. This road was absent from my mental map of the area. Pausing, I tried to recalibrate my bearings. Shadows elongated gradually, casting mystical forms amidst the trees lining the way. The road beneath my wheels was unusually pristine, devoid of potholes or imperfections, a smooth ribbon of asphalt fading into the evening mist. Leaves twirled lazily in the air, as if time itself moved languidly in this realm. Proceeding cautiously, I observed the landscape with mounting curiosity. The trees flanking the road appeared ancient and twisted, their canopies interlocking above like a natural arch, filtering the dimming twilight. Flickering lights in the distance, akin to out-of-season fireflies, glided gracefully among the tree trunks, ephemeral and elusive. The silence enveloped me, broken solely by the gentle purr of the engine and the rustle of leaves stirred by the wind. Advancing, the road seemed to undergo a subtle transformation. The boundaries blurred as if softened by an unseen brush. Shadows deepened, yet not menacingly. Reality itself seemed to mellow, losing its sharp edges. Abruptly, a sight caught my eye. An aged brass mailbox stood by the roadside, its preservation defying time, gleaming as if new. Intricately engraved with a compass rose, it bore no name or number. When I reached out to touch it, a faint warmth seemed to emanate from the metal, contrasting with the cool evening air. The road continued its sinuous path, revealing increasingly curious details. Dimly glowing milestone stones lined the edge, emitting a phosphorescent light from within rather than from any external source. The sky above took on an indescribable hue, a shade seemingly unique to this forgotten enclave. Stars began to twinkle, yet even they appeared different, as though from another era or dimension. After what felt like hours or mere minutes, I arrived at the crest of a hill. The road opened into a small, circular clearing, its ancient stones immaculately paved. At its center, an old iron lamppost cast a warm, inviting glow. Halting the car, I stepped out. The air hung eerily still, as if time itself paused. In the distance, I glimpsed the city lights I had departed, distant and detached, as if veiled from this reality. Surveying the panorama, I noticed the road behind me had metamorphosed. No longer smooth asphalt, but a path of ancient stones, weathered by countless journeys. Yet moments ago, I had been certain it was a modern surface. Returning to my car, I sought the road map in the glove compartment. Illuminated by the lampost's glow, I scrutinized every detail. Confirming my suspicion, this road did not exist on the map. It was as if I had traversed a realm existing solely in dreams. Folding the map, a gust of wind caused it to quiver in my grasp. Fleetingly, golden lines seemed to materialize on the paper, tracing a faintly glowing path before vanishing. Blinking, the image dissipated. Lingering in that surreal space, I absorbed the tranquil aura it exuded. Eventually, as I resolved to depart, I noticed the lamppost had extinguished silently. Ahead lay darkness, yet an unspoken assurance guided me homeward. Driving towards the city, I glanced repeatedly in the rearview mirror. The lamppost reignited, its glow diminishing as I distanced myself. A golden shimmer danced in the air, as if stardust had been scattered on the road absent from the map. In the days that ensued, I endeavored to rediscover that road, embarking on hours-long quests through the countryside, exploring every fork and byway. Alas, that solitary lamppost and its luminous stones had vanished like a wisp of a dream. The sole remnant of my venture was a faint golden trace on my weathered map, visible only when illuminated just so, a clandestine enigma yearning to be unveiled. Story 23. The gentle breeze whispered through the evening, carrying the fragrant essence of night-blooming flowers from the garden. Nestled in my beloved armchair, I watched idly as shadows waltzed across the walls of the living room, painted by the flickering glow of a solitary candle. Beside me rested my trusty old Polaroid camera, a cherished heirloom from my grandmother that had stood the test of time. Though it had been ages since I last wielded it, a mysterious urge nudged me to pick it up that particular night. The familiar weight of the camera brought a sense of solace as I inspected it in the dim light. Instinctively, my fingers found their way to the shutter button, a motion engraved in muscle memory from countless snapshots past. Acting on impulse, I aimed the lens towards the shadowed nook of the room and clicked. The flash pierced the darkness fleetingly, followed by the mechanical hum of the photo slowly materializing. I waited in quiet anticipation as colors materialized on the blank canvas before me. A peculiar sight caught my eye as the image developed. Nestled in the corner I had captured, a vague figure materialized. Indistinct yet present, it hovered in the air like a wispy specter, casting a spell of curiosity upon me. My initial reaction was to glance towards the corner in question, only to find emptiness staring back at me. Intrigued, I aimed the camera once more in the same direction. This time, the resulting photo painted a starkly different picture. The figure had morphed into a more defined shape, seemingly inching closer to the lens. A semblance of a face emerged, albeit obscured and enigmatic. A subtle ripple of awe tingled down my spine, not born of fear, but rather a reverent intrigue. Enthralled by the unfolding mystery, I continued capturing images, each one drawing the figure nearer, its form sharpening with every click. It felt as though the entity used the photographs as a conduit to our world, each exposure granting it solidity. Blurry outlines gradually gave way to vintage silhouette, hinting at a bygone era, perhaps the 1940s. The room's silence deepened, almost tangible, suffused with an unseen presence that stirred my senses. The air grew heavier, laden with a quietude that defied explanation. The candle flame flickered, untouched by any breeze, as if acknowledging the enigmatic visitor. Spellbound, I snapped away, the pace leisurely now, savoring the enigmatic communion unfolding before me. In the final photograph of the night, the figure loomed so close it dominated the frame. A delicate smile graced the woman's face, her eyes seeming to pierce through the glossy veil of the Polaroid, meeting mine with an uncanny familiarity. A sense of recognition stirred within me, evoking dormant memories from my past. It wasn't until I rose to retrieve an aged photo album that I realized my hands trembled ever so slightly. Leafing through the yellowed pages, I unearthed the revelation I sought, a vintage picture of my grandmother as a young woman, captured by the selfsame Polaroid. The mirrored smile in the photograph mirrored the one immortalized in the final snapshot I had taken. Arranging the photos in chronological order on the table, they wove a wordless tale of a bridge spanning two worlds, bridged by the lens of an ancient camera. I never sought to replicate that inexplicable encounter, and the Polaroid found its place back on the shelf. Yet, on tranquil evenings bathed in the golden hues of twilight, I find myself drawn to those photographs. At times, it appears as though the smile captured within them shifts imperceptibly, as if my grandmother were imparting a silent message. In those fleeting moments, the veil between memory and reality thins, akin to the delicate surface of a freshly developed Polaroid, blurring the boundaries between worlds. Story 24. The rain softly tapped against the windows of my quaint country home, crafting a soothing melody that intertwined with the gentle creaking of the wooden floor beneath my steps. It was a serene autumn evening, where reality and fantasy seemed to meld seamlessly. The leaves outside rustled in the dark, casting ever-shifting shadows on the hallway walls painted in a soft cream hue, visible through the misty panes. Nestled in my cherished armchair, cradling a cup of now-cool chamomile tea, I absent-mindedly watched as the light from the floor lamp cast a golden halo on the ground. An unfamiliar aura lingered in the air that night, a subtle yet persistent feeling that eluded my grasp. Perhaps it was the heaviness of the atmosphere or the profound silence enveloping the house, almost palpable in its depth. Slowly rising, my attention was snagged by a flicker of movement in the corner of my eye. The hallway leading to the bedroom seemed elongated, stretching beyond its usual confines. Shadows in the corners appeared denser, almost alive with a darkness that seemed to pulsate. Pausing at the threshold of the living room, I peered into the thickening darkness at the hallway's end. As I ventured forward, the temperature dropped gradually, and the floor's familiar creaks took on an alien quality. The family portraits adorning the walls seemed to regard me with an altered gaze, as if the faces within had subtly changed. Halting midway down the hallway, a particular scent caught my senses, a musty fragrance of old tomes and damp wood foreign to my home. Turning towards the window on my right, rainwater had etched intricate patterns on the glass, following a cryptic and inexplicable design. And then it materialized. A shadow, darker than the rest, glided with an eerie grace along the opposite wall. It bore no tangible source, possessing a solidity akin to congealed mist. Moving deliberately, almost cautiously, it seemed to acknowledge my presence. My breath deepened as I observed, not fear but a curious sense of recognition enveloping me, as if this entity had always lingered, awaiting acknowledgement. The shadow halted by the guest room door, assuming a faintly human shape. Taking a step closer, it reacted to my approach, wavering slightly. The rain's murmur transformed into a steady whisper, as if conveying a message. Straining to listen, I discerned fleeting words in an unfamiliar yet oddly comprehensible tongue. The air chilled around me, though not unpleasantly so, akin to being swathed in cool silk on a balmy summer night. The shadow resumed its motion, gliding towards me in a fluid, slow-motion dance. I stood transfixed as it neared until just a few steps away it paused. In the hush of the house, my heartbeat sounded steady and serene. The shadow inclined slightly, a gesture of greeting. Moved by an inexplicable impulse, I raised a hand. Mirroring me, the shadow extended a hand-like form, and a warmth radiated where our hands nearly touched. Then, with a graceful dissipation, it dispersed into the air, leaving behind a faint essence of jasmine and a profound tranquility. Remaining in the hallway for what felt like an eternity, I listened to the rain's fading cadence. Upon returning to the living room, I found my tea still warm, as if time had paused during our encounter. Since that evening, on rainy nights traversing that hallway, I keenly watched the shadows. At times, I catch a glimpse of that familiar figure dancing just beyond my peripheral vision. The enigma of that shadow's identity remains unsolved, yet its presence bestowed not unease, but an understanding that some mysteries require no elucidation. The hallway of my home now holds this secret, and on quiet nights when rain taps against the windows, I anticipate, with a blend of curiosity and peace, a new rendezvous with the shadow that dances beyond the hallway. Story 25. The November breeze danced with the dry leaves scattered across the driveway, while I gazed at the shadowy outline of the forsaken mansion set against the heavy, slate-gray sky. Known as the never-inhabited house, a misnomer of sorts, for it had indeed been home to someone long ago, though their identity had faded into obscurity. Approaching the weathered gate, the touch of the icy wrought iron sent a shiver through me. The air carried a distinct scent of moss and damp stone, adding to the eerie atmosphere. The neglected garden sprawled in disarray, with brambles and nettles reclaiming the cracked walls. Yet amidst the neglect, the mansion exuded a somber charm that lingered in the air. Signed as a real estate agent tasked with assessing the property, I navigated the wild garden, noticing peculiar signs of recent activity amid the overgrown foliage. Faint trails suggested a regular visitor, a mystery in itself given the property's supposed abandonment. Pushing open the front door, it groaned softly on its hinges, revealing an interior cloaked in a bluish dimness filtered through closed shutters. A heavy stillness hung in the air, thick with dust and the faint aroma of aged wood. Each step on the creaking floorboards echoed as I explored the main salon, where furniture draped in yellowed sheets loomed like ghostly remnants in the semi-darkness. Veiled mirrors on the walls played tricks with the light, casting ethereal illusions that seemed to shift with each passing moment. Ascending the staircase, my hand trailed along the polished wooden handrail, worn smooth by years of use. Along the upper corridor, a line of closed doors beckoned me, each unveiling empty rooms save for a few shrouded pieces of furniture. It was in the final chamber that a sense of unease crept over me. A feminine bedroom, untouched by time save for a lingering disturbance in the settled dust. A silver brush lay on the dresser beside strands of dark, freshly shed hair, a stark contrast to the surrounding neglect. The perfectly made bed bore a faint indentation, as if someone had sat there moments before. A chill seeped into my veins as my gaze flickered across the room, catching a fleeting glimpse of a figure in the mirror, a phantom presence that sent my heart racing. Hurrying back down the stairs, the shifting afternoon light cast deeper shadows within the salon, the silent mirrors appearing to track my movements as I hastened towards the exit. Just as I reached for the door handle, a soft, haunting melody drifted down from above, a melancholic tune that stirred ancient echoes within the walls. Pausing, I strained to discern the source of the ethereal music, unsure if it was the wind or a trick of my imagination. With a heavy breath, I departed, closing the door behind me as the garden enveloped me in a tranquil stillness, the wind now a gentle murmur. Glancing back at the mansion, a flicker of movement behind an upstairs window caught my eye, a fleeting glow that vanished as swiftly as it appeared. In the days that followed, I meticulously compiled my report on the property, detailing its condition, required renovations, and potential value. Omitting the curious discoveries within the bedroom, I cryptically noted, the property possesses a unique allure that may captivate a discerning buyer. Despite lingering on the market, I found myself drawn back to the rusted gate, where each visit hinted at a spectral figure drifting through the upper rooms, a silent sentinel awaiting an unseen guest. Perhaps the enigma of the never-inhabited house lay not in its vacancy, but in the eternal presence of a solitary soul who had never truly departed. Story 26. The night lay hushed, veiled in a delicate mist that swirled like a waltz in the dimness. Nestled in my cherished armchair, the plush burgundy one beside the grand antique mirror, I pored over a tome beneath the gentle glow of a vintage lamp. The pendulum clock's steady beat wove a spellbinding cadence, while the hearth's warmth wrapped me in a snug embrace. Amid that serene moment, a peculiar sensation caught my attention. Initially fleeting, akin to a peripheral glimpse of movement, I lifted my gaze from the pages to meet my own reflection in the aged mirror. The golden frame, adorned with intricate florals, glimmered softly in the flickering firelight, yet a subtle chill crept down my spine as I beheld the mirrored image. Something felt amiss, subtly askew. Tilting my head ever so slightly, I noticed a slight lag in my reflection's response, as if it sought to mimic rather than mirror my movements naturally. I tried to dismiss it as mere fatigue or the fire's capricious dance of shadows. Alas, the longer I scrutinized, the more disquieting the anomaly became. Raising my right hand, the reflection hesitated a fraction before mimicking the gesture. A smile tugged at my lips, and the reflection's visage mirrored mine with a barely perceptible delay. The crackling of wood in the hearth now carried a hint of menace, as though attempting to convey a message. The room's air thickened, charged with a subtle tension that slowed my breath. The scent of candle wax mingled with an ancient aroma, reminiscent of forgotten tomes and faded memories. Rising from the armchair with deliberate care, I observed the reflection's unnaturally fluid mimicry of my movements, as if dancing a preordained choreography rather than mirroring my spontaneity. Those reflected eyes seemed to hold depths unknown, concealing secrets beyond my ken. Drawing nearer to the mirror, I discerned further disconcerting disparities. The room in the reflection bore subtle differences from mine, books arranged in a different order, unfamiliar objects occupying spaces I did not recall. An old framed photograph depicting a seascape in my reality revealed a blurred countenance fixated on me in the reflection. The pendulum of the clock maintained its relentless sway, yet in the mirrored world, time's passage seemed languid, as if flowing at a different pace. Shadows cast by the hearth cavorted on the walls, manifesting shapes hinting at silent watchers. Tentatively, I reached out to touch the mirror's chill surface, and my reflection reciprocated with an almost beckoning gesture. Our fingertips met on the icy glass, but while I felt the cold bite of crystal, the reflection's countenance betrayed a wholly different sensation. Stepping back, I watched as the reflection hesitated momentarily, as if contemplating whether to follow or remain. When it did move, its motions grew increasingly autonomous, as though gradually asserting its own volition. Retrieving an old velvet cloth from a drawer, I veiled the mirror, obscuring that disquieting doppelganger. As the fabric draped over the reflective surface, a mystifying smile seemed to flicker across my reflection's face, an expression foreign to my own. Since that night, the mirror has remained shrouded. Yet in the stillness of the darkest hours, faint stirrings echo from behind the veil, as though another dwells in a mirrored replica of my abode. And in the tranquility of night's depth, when the house is steeped in profound silence, I ponder whether that reflection lingers, a shadow self inhabiting a realm of glass and silver parallel to mine. Uncertainty clouds my mind, for I cannot discern if what transpired was real or a figment of my imagination. Henceforth, each time I pass a looking glass, I am haunted by the question, does the reflection truly mirror me? Or has something learned to mimic so flawlessly that reality blurs into illusion? Story 27. The night had enfolded the old house in a velvet cloak of quiet, broken only by the soft tapping of autumn rain against the window panes. Nestled in my cherished armchair, cradling a cup of steaming tea, I gazed absently at the painting hanging on the wall opposite me. An heirloom from my grandmother, it portrayed a woodland scene at sunset. Though not a valuable piece, it possessed an uncanny ability to stir a sense of melancholic tranquility within me. As the golden light from the floor lamp cast dancing shadows around the room, a peculiar sight caught my eye. The painting appeared slightly askew to the right, a deviation from how I remembered it. Setting down the cup on the nearby table, I rose slowly, the wooden floor murmuring beneath my feet as I drew near the wall. With gentle hands, I straightened the artwork, feeling the rough texture of the vintage frame under my fingertips. Returning to my seat, I resumed my reading, enveloped in the warmth of the tea and the soothing patter of the rain. After a time, I lifted my gaze and beheld the painting once more, now leaning to the left. A faint shiver rippled through me, though I endeavored to dismiss it as mere fatigue or a trick of light. Rising again, this time with caution, I approached the painting and noticed a new detail. The colors of the sunset appeared more vibrant, almost pulsing with life, while the tree shadows seemed longer than before. Tentatively, I reached out to touch the canvas, finding it warm to the touch, the paint catching the light in an unfamiliar manner. In the days that followed, I became increasingly attuned to the painting's subtle alterations. Each time I entered the room, it seemed to have shifted ever so slightly. Sometimes the changes were barely perceptible, while on other occasions they were more pronounced. Not only did the tilt vary, but the very essence of the painting seemed to transform subtly. The density of the trees, the shape of the clouds, the presence of hidden details all seemed to shift imperceptibly. Intrigued, I began documenting these changes through photographs, comparing them meticulously. The metamorphoses were slight yet undeniable, as if the painting held secrets that unfolded gradually. One quiet evening, as I sat in my familiar armchair, a movement caught my eye. The painting was tilting on its own, a slow and almost imperceptible motion. Curiosity mingled with a surreal calm within me, and I rose to approach the painting once more. As I gazed upon it, the canvas seemed to hum faintly, and in the reflection of the protective glass, a fleeting image materialized. The blurred profile of my grandmother, like a faded memory, seemed to smile as if adjusting the painting with a gentle hand. Since that moment, I've embraced these changes as part of the house's enchantment. Each night, before retiring to bed, I dedicate moments to studying the painting, seeking out its hidden truths. I often wonder if it's my grandmother's way of communicating her presence, guiding me through this enigmatic artwork that breathes and evolves. I've kept this tale close to my heart, sharing it with none, cherishing the sweet mystery. The painting continues its subtle dance, less frequent now, as if it has found a delicate equilibrium between revealing itself and safeguarding its enigma. And so every evening I find myself in my armchair, savoring a cup of tea, lulled by the rain's gentle rhythm, and observing the painting that lives its own silent narrative, a dialogue known only to us. Story 28. As the hotel hallway basked in a comforting amber glow that filtered through exquisite honey-colored glass lampshades, a sense of tranquility enveloped the late hour. The only sound to disrupt the stillness was the gentle hum of the air conditioners, creating a soothing backdrop to my weary steps. Pulling my silent wheel suitcase along the plush burgundy carpet, the weight of travel fatigue pressed heavily upon my shoulders after a long day of business engagements. Approaching the elevator, I gazed at my blurred reflection in the metallic doors, the digital numbers above slowly counting down, 654. A soft green light from the display cast a calming glow on the walls. With a soft chime, the elevator doors slid open, revealing a small space adorned with mirrors and dark wood. Selecting the 7th floor, I leaned against the back wall and closed my eyes briefly, seeking a moment of respite. The elevator initiated its ascent with a seamless, gentle motion, the faint sound of its workings resembling a deep, rhythmic breath. Upon reopening my eyes, a peculiar sight greeted me in the mirror's reflection. It appeared as though my image lagged slightly behind my movements, a fleeting illusion perhaps attributed to exhaustion. The elevator glided to a stop, and the doors parted silently. Stepping into the hallway, an unsettling feeling crept in. The once familiar burgundy carpet had transformed into a dark green hue, the wall lamps taking on an antique allure with an Art Deco design I couldn't recall noticing earlier. The 7th floor, as indicated by the elevator display, exuded an entirely different ambience. The corridor seemed elongated, narrower, and carried a distinctive aroma of aged books and ancient wood. The room doors bore unconventional labels, 7A, 7B, 7C, deviating from the standard numbering I had anticipated. Turning to retrace my steps to the elevator, I found the doors had sealed shut, my attempts to summon it proving futile. The display above remained dormant, as if erasing any trace of the elevator's existence. The silence thickened, almost tangible, as I navigated the unfamiliar surroundings, each door I passed exuding a unique aura, hinting at untold stories veiled behind their dark wood facades. At the corridor's end, a figure sat in an antique armchair, a venerable doorman in a bygone-era uniform, his white hair impeccably groomed. As our eyes met, he offered a gentle smile, his voice carrying a sense of familiarity as he inquired, "Are you lost?" Acknowledging my disorientation, I confessed, I was headed to the 7th floor, but this place. Interrupting with a cryptic smile, he remarked, "Ah, this is indeed the 7th floor, just not the one you sought. You see, this elevator possesses a peculiarity. It guides weary travelers to where they need to be, not necessarily where they believe they ought to go." Surveying the subtle details for the first time, I noticed the golden-framed photographs adorning the walls depicted smiling figures in period attire, while the clock displayed an impossible time, its hands tracing a reverse path. Reassuringly, the doorman assured me, "Fear not, the elevator shall return in due time. In the interim, why not rest here? Time is but a fleeting companion." Settling into the adjacent armchair, a sense of serenity washed over me, the once disquieting silence now cradling me like a warm embrace. The doorman resumed his reading, and I found solace in observing the mesmerizing dance of shadows on the walls, crafting intricate patterns that lulled the mind. Time seemed to ebb and flow, the rhythmic ticking of the inverted clock weaving a tranquil melody, akin to a gentle lullaby. At a juncture unbeknownst to me, the familiar chime of the elevator resonated. "There," the doorman remarked without glancing up from his book, "you may now return to your designated floor." Rising, a peculiar sense of rejuvenation enveloped me. Approaching the elevator, I turned to express gratitude, only to find the armchair vacant. A worn leather-bound book lay upon the armrest, its pages whispering tales of the past in the soft light. Stepping into the elevator, the journey proved brief, and upon disembarking, I found myself back in the familiar hallway with its burgundy carpet and contemporary fixtures. Reaching my room, I paused before entering, stealing a final glance at the elevator. For a fleeting moment, the digital display flickered, revealing an unfamiliar symbol before returning to its customary 7. Since that mystical encounter, each elevator ride in a hotel prompts contemplation. Will it lead me where I desire, or where destiny beckons? And on hushed nights, a faint rustle of pages echoes through the corridors, a reminder of an ethereal realm that exists betwixt floors, where time dances in reverse and weary souls find solace in the embrace of mystery. Story 29. Night draped the house in its hushed embrace, as the wind murmured softly through the leaves of the ancient tree in the garden. Nestled in the armchair of my bedroom, I watched as shadows waltzed across the walls in the flickering lamplight. It was that magical hour when sleep beckoned, yet a peculiar resistance held me in its grasp. Night after night, a recurring dream had woven its way into my slumber, leaving me unsettled. The room's warmth and the steady tick of the old pendulum clock swayed me gently. My gaze fell upon the open diary resting on the desk, where I had diligently documented the intricate details of that haunting dream. Each page bore my meticulous script, chronicling the same series of scenes: a spiraling staircase of gray stone descending into the abyss, the distant echo of water droplets, and a grand wooden door adorned with cryptic symbols. Flipping through the diary's pages, a detail caught my eye, one that had eluded me before. In every iteration of the dream, the chill seemed to seep deeper as I descended the stairs. My fingers brushed against the icy stone, my breath forming wisps of vapor in the air. Yet what truly set the dream apart was the uncanny sense of recognition that accompanied me on this enigmatic journey, as if the staircase led to a place I intimately knew, despite never having set foot there in reality. The door at the staircase's base always remained shut, but each night drew me closer to deciphering its intricate carvings. The fluid symbols seemed to shift and pulse beneath my gaze as though imbued with life. In the dream, my fingertips traced the contours of those enigmatic symbols, eliciting a subtle vibration that rippled through the wood as if the door itself were breathing. That particular evening, as I readied myself for slumber, a new presence in the room caught my attention. Resting on the nightstand beside the lamp lay a small object I did not recognize, a weathered bronze key, its ornate designs oddly reminiscent of the symbols adorning the dream door. Curiosity piqued, I lifted the key, struck by its weight and the icy touch it exuded. Though I could not recall its origin, its presence felt strangely natural, as though it had always belonged in my possession. Drifting into bed, the key clasped in my hand, its tangible weight reassured me of its reality amidst the realm of dreams. As the tendrils of sleep enveloped me, a sense of anticipation tingled in the air. The dream unfurled as usual: the spiral staircase, the melodic drip of water, the gradual descent into frigid air. Yet this time, upon reaching the door, the key nestled in my palm thrummed faintly, resonating with the glyphs etched into the wood. Bringing the key to the door, I discovered a hidden lock nestled among the engravings. With a steady hand, I inserted the key. The mechanism turned with a dulcet chime, akin to a long-forgotten melody. The door creaked open slowly, revealing not a new chamber but a mirror reflecting the staircase behind me. In the mirrored image, the steps ascended instead of descending. Startled awake in the early morning light filtering through the curtains, the key still cradled in my hand now radiated warmth as if imbued with life. Upon the desk lay the open diary, a new page filled with characters unfamiliar to me, akin to the door symbols, their shapes undulating like waves in an inky sea. Since that fateful night, the dream has ceased its haunting repetitions. The key rests upon the nightstand, occasionally emitting a subtle vibration on quiet evenings. I often ponder what awaits at the summit of that mirrored staircase, and whether one day I will muster the courage to ascend it. For now, I find solace in observing the dancing symbols within the diary, whispering a tale that perhaps I am not yet prepared to unravel. Story 30. The night held its breath, a symphony of gentle sounds harmonizing with the soothing rhythm of rain tapping on the rooftop. Stirred from slumber once again, a common occurrence in recent nights, I found myself wide awake with a peculiar sensation. Bathed in the soft glow of moonlight seeping through the curtains, a peculiar sight greeted me on the nightstand, an ancient brass key, adorned with intricate designs along its edges. Although unfamiliar to my memory, it exuded a sense of familiarity, as though it had always been intertwined with my existence. Grasping the key, its cold touch sent a delicate shiver down my spine. Surprisingly weighty for its size, the metal bore the weathered patina that only time can bestow upon objects. As I studied it in the dim light, I marveled at its unique design, smooth and worn, lacking the jagged teeth of modern keys or the grooves of antiquity. Floral patterns intertwined with symbols reminiscent of a long-forgotten script adorned its surface. Compelled by an inexplicable urge to explore, I rose from my bed. The house appeared different in the night, shadows reshaping familiar spaces. Guided by the key's faint bluish glow, I ventured through the rooms. The creaking of the wooden floor beneath my feet and the scent of aged wood and yellowed paper in the air added to the mysterious ambience. Each door I approached, I instinctively brought the key near, feeling a subtle vibration tingling through my fingers as if it sought something unseen. It was in my study that a peculiar resonance caught my attention. The antique bookcase inherited from my grandfather seemed to hum in harmony with the key's radiance. Drawing closer, I watched as the key's glow intensified, casting dancing shadows from the books upon the walls, pulsating like a hidden heartbeat. Tracing the key along the bookcase's edge, a faint, almost imperceptible sound filled the room akin to a note from a long-forgotten melody. The key's vibration heightened, resonating with the wood of the bookcase, as if they communicated in a silent language. In a moment suspended in time, the air thickened with an ancient presence, and shadows danced with awareness. The key's glow pulsated in a rhythmic cadence, revealing intricate patterns within the bookcase's wood that had previously eluded my notice. Acting on an instinct I could not comprehend, I pressed the key against the center panel of the bookcase. Despite the absence of a visible lock, as the key made contact, a deep, sigh-like sound reverberated through the room. The wood's surface undulated like disturbed waters, momentarily reflecting faces and places from a forgotten era. Come morning, I found myself seated at my desk, the key clasped tightly in my hand. The dawn's light dispelled the night's mysteries, yet the lingering essence of the night remained. The bookcase stood unchanged, a stoic witness to the events of the night. In the days that followed, the key lost its ethereal glow but retained its weighty presence. On tranquil nights, a faint vibration seemed to emanate from the bookcase, beckoning to the key. Though tempted, I refrained from using it again, recognizing that some secrets are best left undisturbed, even when the means to unlock them lie within reach. Perhaps it was the key that chose me, unveiling a tapestry of enigmas beyond comprehension. Safely ensconced in a velvet-lined drawer of my writing desk, the key whispers in the silence of the night, its secrets waiting to be discovered, or perhaps left forever concealed. Story 31. Night had cloaked the old countryside house in a shroud of profound stillness. Nestled in my cherished armchair by the hearth, I observed the shadows waltz across the walls as the flames leisurely devoured the logs. The warmth enveloped me like a cocoon, while outside the autumn breeze tenderly brushed against the leaves of the trees. In that moment of utter serenity, a peculiar sound reached my ears, a crystalline, childlike giggle drifting from the upper floor of the house. A giggle that seemed to be woven from silver bells. Pausing to listen, I let the sound intermingle with the crackling of the fire. There was no hint of menace in it, rather it was a joyous laugh, almost melodic. Yet I had dwelled alone in this house for over 2 decades and had never entertained children. Curiosity began to trickle through me like a tranquil stream, gradually dispelling the drowsiness that had nearly overtaken me. With deliberate movements, I rose from the armchair, relishing the moment my feet met the ancient Persian rug. The floorboards murmured softly under my weight as I made my way towards the staircase. The glow of the candles flickering in the living room cast a welcoming ambience, casting my shadow on the walls in a silent dance. Ascending the stairs, I sensed the air growing cooler with each step. It was not a harsh cold, but rather a gentle caress on the skin, akin to the breeze by the seaside. The laughter echoed once more, closer this time, emanating from the guest room. A room seldom frequented, adorned with antique furniture draped in white cloths that swayed ever so slightly, moved by an unseen breath. The door to the room stood slightly ajar, allowing a silvery light to filter through, unlike any other light in the house. It was not moonlight, too warm for that, nor the glow of electric lamps. It was something distinct, pulsating softly like a tranquil heartbeat. Pushing the door open, the ancient wood sang a familiar tune. The room unfolded before my eyes, bathed in that peculiar luminescence. The draped furniture created gentle, comforting shapes, reminiscent of clouds in a clear sky. And there, perched on the windowsill, I beheld something that stole my breath away. Not a defined figure, but a play of light and shadow that seemed to mimic a child. The laughter echoed once more, unmistakably originating from that luminous presence. No fear gripped me, only a profound sense of awe. The light child seemed to toy with the rays it emitted, crafting luminous patterns on the walls as if painting with light itself. Moving closer, I noticed a familiarity in its fluid motions. Within those movements, I recognized echoes of the gestures I made as a child while playing alone in my room. The realization washed over me with the sweetness of a forgotten memory. That laughter, so pure and crystalline, was my childhood laughter. Time seemed to stretch as I watched that surreal spectacle unfold. The light child continued its wordless play, occasionally punctuated by that melodious laugh, now resonating like a reverberation from the past. I refrained from speaking or disrupting, fearful of shattering the spell of tranquility and nostalgia. Gradually, the silvery light began to wane, akin to the sun dipping below the horizon on a winter evening. The childlike figure grew increasingly ethereal until only a faint glow lingered. The final laugh I heard was a mere whisper, a tender farewell before dissolving entirely into the darkness. I lingered in the room for what felt like an eternity, enveloped in a soothing silence. The draped furniture ceased its swaying, and the air reverted to its usual temperature. Yet something had shifted. The guest room, once a repository of dusty memories, now held a precious enigma. Returning to my armchair by the hearth, where the fire continued its slow burn, I nestled amidst the cushions, realizing I would never truly decipher the events of that night. Was it a dream, a recollection, or perchance something deeper, a missive from the past that had chosen to materialize through a child's laughter in the darkness? Since that night, whenever I passed by the guest room, I paused to listen. On the stillest of nights, I sometimes catch a faint echo of that crystalline laughter, akin to a gentle lullaby guiding me towards slumber. And with a smile, I allow the mystery to persist, a tender secret shared between myself and the child who laughs in the shadows. Story 32. The rain cascaded down with a hypnotic cadence onto the roof of the dwelling, orchestrating a natural symphony that harmonized with the stillness of the night. Nestled in my cherished armchair, cradling a cup of now-chilled chamomile tea, I found myself captivated by this soothing serenade. Amidst this tranquil ambience, a subtle anomaly seized my attention. A delicate, nearly imperceptible sound intermingled with the rain's percussion, faint footsteps seeming to emanate from the depths of the basement. Initially, I dismissed it as the routine settling of the house. Aged abodes possess their unique voice, communicating through gentle creaks and murmurs, especially on damp nights when the wood swells ever so slightly. Yet this time there was an uncanny quality to the way these sounds materialized, as though they adhered to a deliberate pattern, a rhythm that eerily mirrored human footsteps. With deliberate movements, I rose from my chair, setting the cup down on the adjacent table. The wooden floor beneath my feet radiated a residual warmth, a remnant of the day's heating. As I neared the basement entrance, a gradual chill pervaded the air, as though an icy breath ascended from the stairwell. The brass knob felt unexpectedly frigid to the touch, and as I turned it, the latch emitted a resounding click that reverberated through the silent house. Descending the staircase, shrouded in darkness save for a faint azure glow filtering through the skylight, I proceeded cautiously, my own footsteps melding with the enigmatic ones I had earlier perceived. The characteristic scent of the basement, a fusion of aged timber, dank earth, and an indefinable essence, grew more pronounced with each step downward. Below, shadows cavorted on the walls with each flash of lightning that breached the skylight's veil. Laden shelves adorned with antiquities cast contorted shadows that appeared to sway in cadence with the rain. It was then that I espied something peculiar. Upon the dusty floor surface there lingered footprints, yet these were no ordinary imprints. They resembled faint moisture trails, as though a figure with damp soles had paced in circles at the room's center. Approaching the prints methodically, I sought to discern their origin. The skylight remained intact, and there were no signs of water seepage. While scrutinizing these enigmatic tracks, a peripheral movement seized my attention. In the darkest recess of the basement, beyond the reach of light, a shadowy presence seemed to stir lethargically. My heartbeat quickened slightly, not from dread, but from a blend of curiosity and an inexplicable sense of recognition. Advancing towards the obscure alcove, the air grew even colder. The phantom footsteps I had earlier perceived from above returned, yet now it was unmistakable they derived from no specific location. They enveloped the entire space like an ethereal dance, as if someone traversed every inch of the room simultaneously. In that moment, a revelation dawned upon me. The footprints on the floor weren't haphazardly arranged. They formed an intricate design, a spiraling pattern converging towards the room's core. Tracing this spiral with my gaze, I observed that the freshest prints closest to the center remained moist as though freshly etched. I stood transfixed for what felt like an eternity, witnessing these traces dissipate gradually, evaporating into the frigid basement air. The phantom footsteps dwindled until they melded seamlessly with the rain's persistent cadence outside. Ascending the stairs once more, a peculiar tranquility enveloped me, as though I had borne witness to an ancient, enigmatic ritual that unfolded in the house's depths since time immemorial. That night, as I readied for slumber, I discerned a newfound quality in the rain's melody upon the roof. No longer mere droplets cascading at random, it seemed to echo the rhythmic cadence of the phantom footsteps from the basement. Drifting into sleep, I pondered whether the footsteps would return on subsequent nights, and if I would summon the courage to linger long enough to unveil the enigma behind those ephemeral imprints in the dust. Story 33. The gentle cadence of raindrops tapping against my window had become a soothing companion during my late-night writing sessions. Each droplet left a shimmering trail as it journeyed down the glass, painting an ever-evolving picture of liquid light. The warm embrace of my desk lamp enveloped me in a soft amber glow, while the rest of the room basked in tranquil darkness. I found solace in observing the rain's intricate dance, tracing patterns in its meandering paths. Sometimes, amidst my creative reverie, I fancied tales woven within the crystalline trails. But tonight, a peculiar aura enveloped the rain's descent. It flowed in mysterious patterns, as if guided by an unseen force. Initially, I dismissed it as a product of weary eyes lulled by the rain's hypnotic melody. Yet the anomalies persisted, growing more defined with each passing moment. Droplets avoided specific areas of the glass, forming dry patches that gradually outlined a figure. Intrigued, I leaned closer, breath held in anticipation. The reflection in the window not only mirrored the rain, but also captured the dim interior of my room behind me. Within that layered realm of glass and water, a subtle peculiarity caught my eye. My reflection seemed slightly delayed, as if echoing my movements with a ghostly lag. The rain's gentle symphony intensified, a melodic backdrop to the surreal spectacle unfolding before me. I watched, mesmerized, as my mirrored self extended a hand to touch the glass, a motion my physical self did not replicate. The gesture flowed with an elegant grace, akin to a dancer performing a silent ballet unknown to me. A delicate warmth caressed my skin, juxtaposed against the chill near the window. My reflection's features underwent a subtle metamorphosis, blurring the line between the familiar and the unknown. The eyes that met mine held a wisdom unfathomed, depths that seemed to span epochs. Frozen in awe, I observed as my reflection transcended gender and age, embodying a timeless essence. The rain wove intricate patterns around this enigmatic figure, defying gravity in a mesmerizing display. A flicker from my desk lamp momentarily dimmed the room, ushering in a fleeting moment of darkness. In that ephemeral shadow, a presence brushed against me, tender as a mother's caress. As the light steadied, my reflection reverted to mirroring my actions flawlessly. Yet the rain continued its circular waltz, a testament to the extraordinary visitor that had graced my solitude. Hours slipped by as I sat by the window, contemplating the ethereal encounter. The lingering presence felt akin to a cherished memory, neither menacing nor obtrusive. As dawn approached, the rain eased into a gentle murmur, leaving behind mundane streaks on the window pane. On subsequent rainy nights, I found myself drawn to that window, pen and paper abandoned on my desk. In moments of perfect alignment, when raindrops formed a mirror-like surface, I glimpsed my other self peering back through the glass. A silent understanding passed between us, acknowledging that some mysteries transcend explanation. The rain persisted in its descent, each droplet carrying the promise of another encounter. In those fleeting instants of mutual observation, I pondered if, in a parallel existence, another version of myself sat by their own window, yearning for a glimpse of my world through the gossamer threads of rain. Story 34. The quiet of the night wrapped the narrow streets of the quaint hillside town like a soft velvet cloak. It was an autumn evening filled with the scent of burning wood and wet leaves, as a misty fog slithered through the alleys like a silent phantom. Peering out from my cozy third-floor apartment, I observed the warm glow emanating from the windows of the neighboring houses, painting the darkness with a golden hue. It was peculiar to see so many lights ablaze at such a late hour, yet no signs of life could be glimpsed behind the misty panes. The distant toll of the church bell marked 10 o'clock, its chime sounding hollower than usual, as though shrouded in a cushion of cotton. Having only recently moved to this enigmatic town 3 weeks prior, I had never before witnessed the streets so eerily deserted. Typically, even at such a late hour, a solitary figure would be ambling with their canine companion, or the local youth would be engaged in lively conversations under the flickering street lamp. Nestled in my favorite armchair, cradling a cup of chamomile tea, I noticed the absence of even the usual stray cat that frequented Mrs. Miller's windowsill. The wisps of steam ascending from the cup waltzed through the air, forming fleeting shapes that dissolved into the room's shadows. Opting to keep only a gentle reading lamp aglow, casting soothing shadows upon the cream-colored walls, a sudden rustle seized my attention. It emanated from the corridor leading to the bedroom, a sound akin to the gentle drag of paper across a wooden floor. Intrigued rather than frightened, I rose from my seat, delicately placing the cup upon the nearby wooden table. The air grew colder as I ventured towards the source of the sound, not a biting cold, but a chill reminiscent of an ancient sanctuary. The floorboards murmured beneath my steps, a familiar sound that oddly comforted me. Halting at the threshold of the bedroom, I paused. The door stood slightly ajar, emitting a cool bluish light distinct from any other in the house. Pushing the door open with a soft creak, I beheld a scene of surreal tranquility. Though the window remained shut, the curtains swayed as if stirred by a gentle breeze. Resting upon the floor beneath the window was a single sheet of paper. As I stooped to retrieve it, I noted it was a page torn from a newspaper dated October 15, 1954. The headline of the article immediately seized my attention: Mysterious Night of Silence in Pine Grove. The article recounted a peculiar night when the townsfolk had collectively retreated within their homes, as if bound by an unspoken pact of silence whose origins had faded into obscurity. As I delved deeper into the text, a movement outside the window drew my gaze. Across the street, the lights in the neighboring houses began to extinguish one by one, resembling candles snuffed by an unseen force. Yet behind the darkened windows, motionless silhouettes peered outwards, their gaze fixed upon the silent street. My attention was diverted by a vibration from my robe pocket, signaling a message from the building's WhatsApp group. Tonight, no one ventures outside. It is imperative. Peering out once more, I discerned that all lights had now been extinguished, save for my own. In the deepening hush, I could perceive the gradual deceleration of my heartbeat, as though harmonizing with an ancient and enigmatic rhythm. Seating myself on the edge of the bed, still clutching the newspaper clipping, I marveled at the paper's remarkable softness, as though it had passed through countless hands. Beyond the window, the fog thickened, enveloping the streetlights in a luminous haze. From my vantage point, the entire main street lay deserted, shrouded in an ethereal stillness. Recalling the accounts within the article, which detailed how the townspeople had awoken the following morning with no recollection of the events of that eerie night, I rose slowly and made my way to the light switch. Before extinguishing it, I cast a final glance outwards. The mist had assumed sinuous, almost dancing forms, and for a fleeting moment, I fancied I glimpsed spectral figures moving within its milky depths. With the room plunged into darkness, I reclined upon the bed, fully attired. The silence now reigned supreme, punctuated solely by the gentle ticking of the bedside clock. Drifting towards slumber, I pondered whether the events of this night would linger in my memory come morning, or if, like the other denizens of the town, I would remain oblivious to the cyclical enigma that pervaded our lives. The final echo that resonated in my mind before succumbing to sleep was the distant toll of midnight bells, their chime oddly muted, as if emanating from a realm where silence was the universal tongue of all inhabitants. Story 35. The grandfather clock in my study signaled midnight with its deep, resonant chimes, each one lingering in the air like the gentle ripples on a tranquil pond. Nestled in my weathered leather armchair, a beloved book lay open on my lap as the soft patter of rain against the window panes created a soothing backdrop. The old house around me murmured softly, settling into the hush of the night, its ancient wooden frame finding solace in the darkness. Amidst this serene atmosphere, my gaze was drawn to the hallway door, bathed in the warm glow of my reading lamp, casting shadows that danced mysteriously. Tonight, a subtle shift seemed to have occurred, a change imperceptible yet undeniable. The brass handle gleamed differently, casting an unfamiliar light, while the very essence of the wooden frame appeared altered, though I couldn't pinpoint exactly how. Despite residing in this home for 15 years, in that moment, the door seemed to hold secrets unknown to me. Rising from my seat, I carefully marked my place in the book with a delicate silk ribbon, the floor cool beneath my slippered feet as I approached the enigmatic door. A chill seemed to settle in the air, a whisper of winter creeping into this secluded corner of my sanctuary. My fingertips brushed against the handle, and to my surprise, it radiated warmth that defied the coolness of the night. With a steady hand, I pushed the door open, revealing the familiar hallway bathed in the soft light of my lamp. Everything appeared unchanged: the worn wallpaper, the threadbare carpet, the cherished photographs adorning the walls. Closing the door with a shake of my head, I chided myself for succumbing to fanciful thoughts. Perhaps the mysteries I had been reading had begun to seep into my dreams. That night, as sleep claimed me, visions of doors haunted my slumber. Doors appeared and vanished in improbable places amidst lush gardens, suspended in the heavens, standing solitary on deserted shores. Each door bore the same warm brass handle, a touch of familiarity in their surreal existence. Upon waking, I carried on with my daily rituals, scarcely sparing a glance for the hallway door as I moved through it. It wasn't until evening descended, painting the sky in hues of twilight, that a peculiar anomaly caught my eye. The door seemed to have aged overnight, its hue lighter, as if burdened with the weight of decades. The brass handle now bore a patina that had not been there before, beckoning me to inspect closer. Drawing near, I observed the door with newfound scrutiny, noting the subtle alterations. The wood had transformed lighter, with an intricate grain pattern unknown to me. Even the hinges had shifted, their once dark iron now gleaming with a burnished copper sheen. Yet upon opening the door, the hallway remained steadfast in its familiarity. Night after night, the door underwent subtle metamorphoses, each transformation a delicate dance of time. Some evenings it appeared weathered, others rejuvenated. The handle would shift imperceptibly, the frame gaining or shedding intricate carvings. Intrigued by these enigmatic changes, I began meticulously documenting each shift in a journal, capturing the essence of the door's evolution with intricate sketches and meticulous descriptions. Yet the door remained unaltered in my presence, its transformations unfolding in the depths of night when the world slumbered and the house held its breath. One night, driven by curiosity, I resolved to keep vigil and witness the door's mysterious changes firsthand. I positioned my armchair to face it directly, brewed a pot of potent tea, and settled in for the nocturnal watch. The grandfather clock marked the passage of time with its steady ticking, my eyelids growing heavy but my resolve unyielding. At precisely 3:17 a.m., the lights in my study flickered momentarily, casting the room into darkness. In that fleeting moment, a subtle shift rippled through the air, and when light returned, the door had transformed once more. The warm oak had morphed into lustrous mahogany, delicate silver inlays tracing ethereal patterns that seemed to dance in the corner of my vision. Intrigued, I approached the door, captivated by its newfound allure. My hand reached for the handle, now fashioned from crystal rather than brass, but a sudden hesitation stayed my touch. A gentle hum resonated in the air around the door, a vibration akin to the fading echo of a distant bell. It was then that I made a startling discovery. The door bore no keyhole, a detail that had seemingly vanished in this latest iteration. Puzzled, I searched my journal for any mention of the keyhole, only to find no trace. Had I overlooked such a fundamental detail, or was there a deeper mystery at play? The question lingered, a riddle lingering on the fringes of my consciousness. Now, as twilight descends each evening, my thoughts are consumed by that enigmatic door and its nightly transformations. At times, I catch fleeting glimpses of alternate hallways beyond its threshold, corridors adorned with different carpets, walls cloaked in unfamiliar wallpapers, photographs unknown to me. Yet when I venture to open it, my familiar hallway awaits unchanged. Tempted to rearrange the photographs to test the reality of my surroundings, a whisper of caution holds me back. An unspoken warning echoes in the recesses of my mind, urging me not to delve too deeply into the liminal spaces between perception and truth. The door continues to shift, each night unveiling a new facet of its enigmatic nature. I have grown accustomed to its silent transformations, finding solace in the quiet evolution that unfolds before me. Sometimes I wonder, is it the door that changes, or is it my perception that shifts with each passing night? Perhaps both truths hold, or perhaps neither rings true. What remains certain is the anticipation that stirs within me as the grandfather clock tolls midnight, as the rain taps softly against the windows. I find myself eagerly awaiting the unveiling of the door's latest transformation, pondering the mysteries it may choose to disclose or conceal in the tranquil hours before the break of dawn.